Chapter 1059. Bastard. The palace emissary flew up to the sky in anger. A dignified, great vehicle stage cultivator was actually forced to this extent by two crossing calamity stage cultivators. The shame in his heart could be imagined. He roared in his heart and swore to kill Muyu. On the other side, Gu Etienne's broadsword had already swept out. The overbearing and heavy sword Qi was like a mountain, fiercely slamming on Wu Yuzhou's body. The white soul bead that appeared on Wu Yuzhou's body was instantly smashed into pieces. I will kill all those who threaten my loved ones. An indomitable killing intent appeared in Gu Etienne's eyes. It was bone-chilling. He only respected one person in his life. Even if he had to pay the price with his life, he would protect that person. Anyone who dared to hurt that person would have to pay the price. Wu Yuzhou let out a muffled groan. He couldn't dodge in time and was directly swept by the heavy sword Qi. Like a broken sandbag, he smashed into the arena, creating an incomparably huge pit. Shimen Wuji's figure floated in the air. The petals floating in the air were like sharp weapons in the storm formed by the evil nether fan. Do you want to hear my story? Shimen Wuji's evil nether fan spun in the air. A flute appeared in his hand as he looked at Lu Mingyuan with a faint smile. Very few people in the cultivation world didn't know about his bizarre life experience. No one knew whether Shimen Wuji was as miserable as he said, but many people knew that hearing about Shimen Wuji's tragic life experience was definitely not a good thing. Lu Mingyuan was continuously defeated by Shimen Wuji's evil nether fan, and his white soul bead became dim. He was furious. Shimen Wuji's strength was far beyond his imagination. Even though he was now a powerhouse ranked 6th on the Supreme Immortal list, he always understood that it would be very difficult for him to defeat Shimen Wuji even in his heyday, let alone now when he was in an absolute disadvantage. Lu Mingyuan roared, "Soul Technique Luo Yin, it seems that you don't want to hear my story. What a pity. Since you're a disobedient child, there's no need for you to speak." Shimen Wuji's finger gently brushed across the flute, and the entire flute suddenly trembled. Unexpectedly, it automatically played a clear and melancholic flute melody. It was long and sorrowful, but contained a powerful killing intent. The flute melody formed a terrifying sound wave that rolled up the evil nether fan, swept out, and bombarded Lu Mingyuan's chest, causing it to cave in. Bang! Lu Mingyuan also smashed heavily into the arena, smashing Wu Yuzhou, who had just stood up, back into the depths of the ground. Countless scarves appeared all over Wan's body. Those fragile scarves fluttered in the air as if they would break into rags at the slightest touch. However, every time a scarf wrapped around Qi Xiangxing's body, deep scratches would appear all over his body, so deep that his bones could be seen. Qi Xiangxing's soul bead had already been shattered by Wan, and his filthy body was already riddled with scars. Wan was even more merciless. She directly removed Qi Xiangxing's other hand. The scars that filled the sky tightly wrapped around Qi Xiangxing's body, causing Qi Xiangxing to be unable to breathe. The snow-white scars had already sunk into Qi Xiangxing's skin. I've never had a chance to display my true abilities. Wan smiled sweetly. The scars that filled the sky hung on her body, causing her to be as dazzling as a goddess from the 9th heaven. A strange, evil force emerged from the scarves, and in the end, they were fiercely pulled. Crash! Qi Xiangxing, who was already heavily injured, was directly torn to pieces by Wan's scarves like a tattered doll. He didn't even have the chance to make sound before he died. Extreme Immortal ranked 7th. Qi Xiangxing dead. Lord Palace Envoy, what do we do now? If we can't get out of this barrier, it will be very difficult for us to gain any benefits. Lu Mingyuan crawled up from the ground and said in shock and anger. At this time, half of Lu Mingyuan's body had been completely cut off by Shimen Wuji. He was in an extremely miserable state. Although there was no blood flowing from the wound, there was a charred appearance. There was even a hole in his chest that looked like a fan. Shimen Wuji didn't show any mercy and directly used the fan to blast a large hole in Lu Mingyuan's chest. It was a shocking sight. One of Wu Yuzhou's arms was also cut off by Gu Tian. The wound was neat and tidy, and it still carried a sharp sword energy. That sword energy was very domineering and had already invaded his body. He clenched his sharp teeth, but there was nothing he could do. Gu Tian and the others landed beside Mu Yu and Tian Ran. They had the advantage of terrain and manpower, and they had even killed one of the enemies with their own hands. Still not dead. The broadsword in Gu Tian's hand swept out horizontally, and a deep crack suddenly appeared on the ground. The crack continued to expand and spread to the place where the three of them were standing. The domineering sword energy swept out from the ground. The four of them roared and retreated again. I'm here to collect the debt. I will never let them leave here alive. Shiman Wuji still lazily combed his hair, seemingly casual, but his eyes revealed killing intent. Wan Wan and Shiman Wuji had already rushed over again. Mu Yu and Tian Ran looked at each other. They didn't dare to use a large-scale sword intent. If they used their full strength, the sword intent would inevitably be more powerful, but all the gamblers in the gambling city would also be affected. Once the people in the gambling city woke up from the illusion, the barrier would also lose its effect. We are only responsible for stalling this great Ascension Realm person and preventing him from slaughtering the people in the city. Mu Yu said, I know. Tian Ran nodded. The two of them floated up again, and the two heavenly swords in their hands once again emitted intense light as they headed toward the palace envoy. Although the palace emissary's domain power could no longer affect them, it was still impossible to kill the palace emissary. They could only wait for Gu Yiqian and the other two to kill the others before joining forces to deal with the strongest palace emissary. Bastard! Who would have thought that no matter how much I calculated, I would still be played by Mu Yu? The palace emissary saw the two powerful sword intents coming towards him again, and the three people he brought were already heavily injured. If this continued, it was only a matter of time before the three from Wu Yu's state were killed. Damn it, Mu Yu, I will definitely kill you. The palace envoy angrily roared. His surrounding domain instantly covered Wu Yuzhou and Lu Mingyuan. At the same time, the seven snakes of the wild Nether Seven Absolutes appeared once more. But this time, the seven snakes didn't pounce towards Mu Yu, but towards Wu Yuzhou and Lu Mingyuan. Lord Palace Envoy, don't. Wu Yuzhou and Lu Mingyuan saw the seven snakes biting towards them, and their complexion greatly changed. They never thought that the Palace Envoy would actually attack them in order to escape. Qi Xiangsheng is already dead. The two of you can't beat them. Now, only by using the two of you as a sacrifice can I have enough soul power to break this barrier. You can rest assured. I will avenge you, the palace envoy coldly said. Pung, pung, pung. Chapter 1060. Perhaps even the two from Wu Yuzhou didn't expect that instead of dying in the hands of Gu Yiqian, they would die in the hands of the palace envoy. The palace envoy's seven giant snakes turned his two crossing calamity stage subordinates into soul power essence and swallowed them all. Then his whole body lit up with white soul power, and the soul power forcibly suppressed the vitality. After the soul power essence of the two crossing calamity stage soul race people was absorbed by the palace envoy, his domain ability suddenly became extremely powerful, faintly surpassing the power of Mu Yu and Tian Ran's two heavenly swords. The palace envoy shouted wildly, and his whole body rose from the ground, and once again rushed towards the barrier in the sky. The power of the domain instantly covered the barrier, and with a crash, the entire scarlet barrier collapsed into pieces, as if the blood-red sky was broken. The palace envoy had already rushed out of the gambling city, getting rid of the influence of the vitality formed by tens of thousands of people in the gambling city. This time, I want to raise the whole city to the ground. The palace envoy didn't say until he retreated to the sky. Mu Yu and others looked at each other, and their eyes were incomparably dignified. The palace envoy had swallowed two crossing calamity stage soul race people and had become even stronger than before. Now that the barrier of the gambling city had been broken, the palace envoy had left the gambling city. The vitality of everyone gathered together could no longer be used by the array and could no longer have an impact on the palace envoy. The situation was not good. Soul Technique Luo-in, Wild Seven Arts. The palace envoy's murderous voice came from the sky, and the seven giant snakes had been mixed with a violent momentum towards the entire gambling city. With his current soul power, a long-range attack was enough to destroy the gambling city. Stop him. Otherwise, after the people of the gambling city die, this guy will become even stronger. Muyu shouted, and he had already rushed out to meet the seven violent snakes. Once the gamblers of the gambling city died, it was equivalent to the soul power of tens of thousands of people again, which was the source of the palace envoy's power. It was even more impossible for them to defeat this powerful Deshang stage master. Tian ran, Gu Yitian, Shimen Wuji, and Wan Wan followed closely behind. They all understood the seriousness of the matter. Now that the palace envoy was in the sky, he could fight with all his might. A powerhouse of Deshang realm was quite terrifying. Even if the five of them joined forces, they might not necessarily be able to defeat him. But no one retreated. This was because the five people here all hated the soul race to the bone. They all had a reason to kill them. The heavenly swords in the sky instantly blasted towards the seven giant snakes. The majestic and sharp sword energy seemed to cause the entire world to tremble, and an incomparably tyrannical aura erupted. However, the palace emissary's domain power was completely released, and it was even more terrifying. The seven giant snakes and the two heavenly swords clashed, and the two heavenly swords actually showed signs of collapsing. Muyu calmly stood in the void, and a cyan 8 trigrams array instantly appeared under his feet. The mysterious 8 trigrams array pattern formed a vortex, and this vortex intertwined through the entire gambling city. The life force of all the gamblers was gathered under his feet, and then it fused into the sword intent of the two heavenly swords that were about to collapse. The heavenly swords that were originally in imminent danger shook once again, and once again bloomed with exuberant sword energy and actually blocked the attack of the seven arts of the wild underworld in an instant. However, the power of the domain had already enveloped the five people. Within the power of the domain, the seven giant snakes were almost everywhere. As long as the palace emissary willed it, the seven giant snakes would appear anywhere. When Muyu reacted, 1,000 zhong long giant snake had already appeared behind them and bit towards him, and Tian ran. Be careful. Shimen Wuji and Wan Wan joined hands, and a strange, evil aura erupted from their bodies, blocking the attack of the giant snake. However, the other two giant snakes also attacked them, sending them flying. A simple and tyrannical sword energy swept out, and Gu Yitian's figure had already appeared at the neck of a giant white snake. The sword energy chopped down, and the giant white snake was instantly cut in half. The giant white snake disappeared, but quickly condensed again and wrapped around Gu Yitian. Muyu's shadow sword slashed down from the sky, and the sword energy covered the giant white snake, shattering it and helping Gu Yitian break free from the giant snake's entanglement. Muyu shouted, "Get close to me." Shimen Wuji, Wan Wan, and the others immediately understood, and the five of them quickly dodged the attack of the giant white snake. They surrounded Muyu with their backs against each other, and Muyu was in the center. The wind heart-linking array beneath Muyu's feet also enveloped Gu Yitian, Shimen Wuji, and Wan Wan. We must join hands, otherwise we will inevitably die in the hands of this person, Muyu said in a deep voice. After all, the palace envoy was a Deshang stage expert, and it was impossible for them to gain any advantage in the domain of the palace envoy, so they could only fight together. You command, Gu Yitian said. Shimen Wuji and Wan Wan didn't object. Only Muyu could use the array technique to guide the vitality of the revelry gamblers in the casino city, so letting Muyu command was the most correct choice. At this time, Muyu was in the center. He used the array to absorb the vitality of the casino city, and the vitality of the entire casino city shrouded the five of them. The powerful vitality ensured that they had a place in the domain of the palace envoy. The 7 giant snakes were also condensed from soul power and were quite afraid of the vitality. How do we deal with a Deshang stage expert? Muyu's mind was spinning rapidly. So far, he had encountered more than 1 or 2 Deshang stage experts. Whether it was Venerable Ni Lei, White 8 Monster King, or other Monster Kings, these people gave him an unattainable feeling. The biggest difference between the Crossing Calamity stage and the Deshang stage was that the Deshang stage had initially mastered the ability of the domain. The domain was a trace of their own heavenly law that the Deshang stage comprehended, but no one told Muyu how to deal with this law. However, Muyu knew that any technique had a weakness. For example, his incomparably powerful heavenly sword could display a formidable power with the help of the sword intent of the firmament, but once it was trapped by an enchantment and cut off from the firmament, it would be limited. The reason why Deadwood Daddy's Desperation Domain ability was ineffective against Muyu was because it was full of powerful poison, and poison was ineffective against Muyu. So where was the weakness of the Wild Dark 7 Arts? The 5 Crossing Tribulation Stage geniuses were wrapped in a Cyan 8 trigrams array, forming a powerful barrier. Although it could not affect the Palace Envoy, it was still possible to avoid and resist the attacks of the 7 huge white snakes. It was just that the speed and strength of the attacks of the 7 giant white snakes had become more and more powerful. Every giant snake that came down seemed to make the world tremble, and the clouds in the sky had been shaken away. If it were not for the extraordinary strength of the 5 of them, perhaps they would not be able to block the attack of a giant snake. But if this continued, with their Crossing Tribulation Stage spiritual power, it was impossible for them to outlast a Deshang stage expert. They were afraid that in a moment, they might be completely defeated by the Palace Envoy. You can still hold on for so long. I really underestimated you, but you will die today. The Palace Envoy shouted coldly, and the white soul power in his hand glowed again. The attack of the 7 giant snakes had become more and more intense. The Wild Dark 7 Arts are everywhere in this domain. So how can we see through this domain? Muyu controlled the array and led everyone to dodge the attack of another giant white snake. But another giant snake had already appeared on the left. Gui Tian's sword Qi swept out, cutting off the attack of this giant snake. Forcibly withstanding the attack of the giant snake, the 5 of them retreated again. The giant snake above them appeared again, and Shimen Wuji's evil dark fan swept out a demonic blade, repelling the giant snake. Tian Ran also controlled the sharp Immortal Dew sword to cut down the giant snake below. Muyu recalled his experience of learning the Heavenly Dipper Constellation Array when he was in the Array faction. The Heavenly Dipper Constellation Array could teleport the person using the array, but the teleportation target of this array could randomly appear in a certain range, so it couldn't be completely controlled. Muyu controlled this array by combining it with the falling dust footwork, allowing him to appear in a specific position. To some extent, the Wild Dark 7 Arts was like the Heavenly Dipper Constellation Array improved by Muyu. It could appear in any place in the domain, but it was obviously more powerful than Muyu's Heavenly Dipper Constellation Array. Since that was the case, as long as he calculated the appearance pattern of the 7 giant snakes, then he should be able to predict the next movement of the 7 giant snakes and avoid being so passive. Green array patterns lit up in Muyu's eyes. He kept dodging the attacks of the 7 giant snakes, but the attack positions of the 7 giant snakes gradually formed an extremely complicated trajectory map in his mind. Because of the wind-wind linking array, Gu Yiqian and the others could see the thoughts in Muyu's mind. You want to deduce how to deal with the domain? You can do that? Shimen Wuji was surprised. When the others saw that Muyu was actually deducing this domain in his mind, they were also surprised. They never thought that they could use the deduction ability to deal with a Deshang stage expert. But the deduction method in Muyu's mind was really complicated. Gu Yiqian and the others didn't have the talent in this regard, and couldn't keep up with Muyu's thoughts at all. Boom! The array formed by the 5 people was repelled by the 2 giant snakes. The spiritual power in everyone's body trembled, and their blood tumbled. The power of a Deshang stage expert was still beyond their imagination. Everyone suffered heavy injuries, but everyone gritted their teeth and endured. At this time, Muyu was already immersed in the complicated deduction in his mind, and he couldn't control the entire array. We will help Muyu delay a bit of time. Tian Ran understood Muyu and said to the others. Facing a Deshang stage palace envoy, they could only rely on Muyu. At this time, Muyu needed time to deduce the weakness of this domain. As long as he could deduce the weakness of this domain, it was possible to defeat the palace envoy. But the palace envoy's attack was really fierce, and with the strength of the 5 of them, it was still too difficult. Understood. Gu Yitian simply replied. Every crack on his broadsword was suffused with a powerful sword chi, and it was stained with the vitality gathered by Muyu's 8 trigrams array. That overbearing sword chi unexpectedly formed a 10,000 zhang long sword chi. Tian Ran's immortal dew sword was like a pool of autumn water, helping Muyu block any violent giant white snake that swept over. Her face already showed a strenuous expression. Muyu was concentrating on the deduction at this time, so their strength couldn't be used in one place at the same time. Wan, you, and I don't need to hide. Chapter 1061. Wan hesitated for a moment. Shimin Wuji, are you sure? Is there any other choice? Shimin Wuji closed the evil nether fan in his hand. Wan looked at Muyu and revealed a devastatingly beautiful smile. That's right. No matter what, Muyu and little sister Tian Ran are also our own people, so there is no need to hide anything. What are you two talking about? Gu Yitian frowned. He advocated the simplest killing move, so he didn't know anything about the complicated derivation diagram in Muyu's mind, so he didn't understand what Shimin Wuji and Wan were talking about. You'll understand soon. Shimin Wuji and Wan looked at each other and smiled. Shimin Wuji and Wan slowly walked over and held each other's hands. Then a change suddenly occurred from their bodies. Black-colored aura flashed out from the body of Shimin Wuji, spiraling around his body, and his eyes were suffused with white light. On the other side, the whole body of Wan was enveloped by white light, and the eyes of Wan became pitch black like ink. An ancient aura flowed out from the bodies of Shimin Wuji and Wan, instantly engulfing the entire domain. As if an incomparably tyrannical sharp blade, it tore apart the domain's oppression and occupied its own space. The palace envoy in the sky was gobsmacked and exclaimed, You two actually... How is this possible? Impossible. How can you two? How can it not be? Shimin Wuji and Wan seemed to have completely changed, as if they had become the purest balance of the world. Even the domain of Great Ascension Realm couldn't shrink back from them. The black and white aura on their body was becoming more and more powerful. In the gambling city, Little Handsome, who was cheering on Boyong Daoren, suddenly stopped and looked at the black and white aura in the sky with a puzzled expression on his little face. Little Handsome muttered. What's wrong, little brat? Boyong Daoren asked in puzzlement. Little Handsome scratched his head and said, This is too strange. The shameless Shimin Wuji and the femme fatale Wan are actually... How did they hide it from me? Siebulo, that fellow hid it so deeply. Wait a minute. Doesn't that mean those two fellows are also Siebulo? That's right. It must be. I knew that when I played with them in the past, their auras were very familiar, but they didn't tell me. Damn it. I'll beat them up next time. Gu Yitian and Tian Ran also noticed the difference between Shimin Wuqing and Wan. At this time, Shimin Wuqing and Wan's bodies had lost their wanton and unruly evil aura. On the contrary, they were incomparably solemn. Their bodies were shrouded in black and white energy, as if they were different people. Or to be more precise, they were not people at all. The palace emissary suddenly laughed. I didn't expect the Golden Boy and Jade Girl of the evil faction to have such a special identity. They really fooled our soul race. Siebu Lao is really powerful. In that case, I'd like to see what's so great about this pair of Golden Boy and Jade Girl formed from the chaos of Yin and Yang. Where's the Tao artifact that you are guarding? Chaos Yin and Yang. Tian ran open, her eyes wide. She knew what the chaotic yin and yang meant, because Muyu did not hold back anything from her. Muyu also had the chaotic yin and yang in his body. But perhaps even Muyu didn't expect that the Golden Boy and Jade Girl of the evil faction, Shimin Wuqing and Wan Wan, were actually formed from the chaotic yin and yang, one black and one white. The chaotic yin and yang existed among the 9 Tao artifacts, and they were the most primitive and powerful magic treasures in the world. Controlling the chaotic yin and yang meant controlling the Tao artifact. Just like how the dead tree was the master of the chaotic yin and yang, he controlled the opening ruins cauldron. Muyu was the master of the chaotic yin and yang in the Array Palace, so he controlled the Array Palace. It seemed like Xiebu Lao also controlled the Tao artifact, and he had turned his chaotic yin and yang into Shimin Wuqing and Wan Wan. There are many things that you don't know. You actually dared to attack our pavilion sound court. We will definitely kill you. Shimin Wuqing's entire body was shrouded in black light, but his eyes were filled with a strange white light. His entire body was filled with killing intent. This was the purest kind of devouring and killing intent, causing people to be terrified. Wan Wan's entire body was covered with a pure white light. This white light was very pure, and it no longer had the allure that could bring disaster to a country. In any case, it was thriving and gave people endless hope. However, her black eyes were incomparably deep, forming a sharp contrast with the white light around her body. Swish! Shimin Wuji and Wan Wan had already rushed out. Their black and white aura resonated with each other, forming a powerful aura. Instantly, the 7 huge snakes were smashed to pieces, but the 7 huge snakes instantly condensed together and continued to advance towards them. Shimin Wuqing and Wan Wan didn't take the initiative to attack. Even if they were chaotic yin and yang, their current cultivation was still at the crossing calamity realm. Moreover, without Xiebu Lao, they couldn't fully display the powerful battle strength of chaotic yin and yang. The two of them intertwined with each other, forming the Tai Chi and yin-yang auras that surrounded Muyu's body. They fused into a black and white barrier that protected Muyu. The wild underworld 7 arts bombarded the black and white auras formed by them, but it didn't break their seal, nor did it affect Muyu. On the other hand, Gu Yiqian and Tian Ransword auras would occasionally blast out from the black and white barrier, slashing towards the palace envoys. Hateful! What a powerful defensive ability. The palace envoys were furious. He had already devoured 2 crossing calamity realm subordinates, but when faced with the barrier formed by Shimin Wuqing and Wan Wan, he was helpless. Shimin Wuqing and Wan Wan's identities were hidden too deeply, and the chaotic yin and yang were extremely powerful existences. When combined with a person's consciousness, the power it contained was even more tyrannical. We must capture Shimin Wuqing and Wan Wan alive before they fully mature. As long as we capture them, we can control Xiebu Lao's Tao artifact. At that time, the palace envoy's gaze fell on Muyu within the black and white barrier. Muyu is also someone that the Spiritas wanted to capture alive. This was because Muyu is even more difficult to deal with than Shimin Wuqing and Wan Wan. He controlled another pair of chaotic yin and yang, and he also controlled a powerful Tao artifact. The palace envoys angrily shouted. The soul force in his hand once again erupted with a dazzling white light that violently swept towards the black and white barrier. He could see the limits of Shimin Wuqing and Wan Wan. Even if they were chaotic yin and yang, they were still like humans and had weaknesses. Pung! The black and white barrier heavily struck. Shimin Wuqing and Wan Wan's spinning speed had already begun to slow down. It was clear that they were still unable to completely contend against the Grand Ascension Realm Palace envoys. After persisting for a moment, they were already unable to hold on. Shimin Wuqing clenched his teeth and shouted, "Muyu, are you done yet? You want to stall for time? You're thinking too much. Although I have to admit that the 5 of you are indeed formidable, and you should be proud of yourselves for being able to delay us for so long. The game is over. You should obediently follow me back to see His Highness." The palace envoy sneered. As long as they captured Shimin Wuqing and Wan Wan, and then captured Mu Yu, then even if 3 transcending tribulation experts died, it would still be worth it. The wild netherworld 7 uniques domain became more and more powerful. At a certain moment, the 7 huge white snakes suddenly fused together into a 10 million zhang long white snake. The white snake covered the sky, as if it wanted to crush the entire sky. Pressed down in the air, the entire gambling city fell into a boundless and endless night, without a trace of light shining out. Damn it, I can't hold on any longer. Shimin Wuqing fiercely shouted. Hold on a little longer. Wan Wan shouted. The black and white barrier formed by the two of them was like a drop in the ocean in front of this 10 million zhang long giant snake. It wasn't even worth mentioning. And at this time, the 10 million zhang long giant white snake's head was already smashing towards their black and white barrier. Shimin Wuqing and Wan Wan both clenched their teeth. But at this time, Mu Yu suddenly opened his eyes. The complex and mysterious deduction diagram in his eyes instantly converged at a single point. I know how to deal with this domain. When Mu Yu opened his eyes and saw Shimin Wuqing and Wan Wan's auras, he was stunned for a moment. But he quickly reacted. At this time, a black and a white aura leapt out from his body. It was another pair of chaotic yin and yang. The chaotic yin and yang instantly transformed into a black and white 8 trigrams array beneath Mu Yu's feet. The 8 trigrams array pattern spread to Shimin Wuqing and Wan Wan's bodies. Then the entire void violently rippled, as if a wave was rolling over them, bringing them into the wave. At the same time, the 10 million zhang long giant snake of the wild netherworld 7 unique bit down on Mu Yu. It bit down on an 8 trigrams array pattern formed by Mu Yu. The 8 trigrams array pattern fused with the vitality of the entire gambling city, forcibly blocking the giant snake's attack. Everyone had already moved away from the giant snake, leaving the killing range of the giant snake. You want to deal with my domain with just you? Ha ha ha. Wishful thinking. The palace envoy disdainfully said. There had never been a person who dared to provoke a great Ascension Realm Master when they were at the Transcending Tribulation Realm. Even if the palace envoy had just stepped into the Great Ascension Realm, there was still an insurmountable gap between the Great Ascension Realm and the Transcending Tribulation Realm. However, Mu Yu's eyes also shined with a black and white light. At the same time, golden and white runes revolved around him. A green rune swept out from beneath his feet, fiercely shooting behind him. Shwa! Just as the green rune reached behind Mu Yu, the giant snake's head also appeared from that place, biting down on the green rune. Good fellow, you can actually guess where my giant snake will appear. But let me tell you, in the face of absolute strength, any tricks are useless. The palace envoy stretched out his hand again. He controlled the giant snake, wanting to tear Mu Yu's green rune into pieces. However, his expression quickly changed because he realized that no matter how the giant snake bit, it could not break the green rune. The green rune was like a thread that wrapped around the giant white snake. In the blink of an eye, it crawled all over the giant snake's body and merged with it. Child's play. Is your array technique a joke? The palace envoy quickly calmed down because, although the green rune was attached to his giant white snake, it did not have any effect on it. The giant white snake was still biting down on Mu Yu and the others. However, Mu Yu did not dodge this time. He stood in the same place and watched indifferently as the giant snake opened its bloody mouth and bit down. Although the giant white snake was biting down in a very arrogant manner, it was as if there was an insurmountable gap between it and the golden rune. It cannot bite down. Chapter 1062. In front of absolute strength, your formation technique is basically unable to block. Palace Envoy sneered while looking at Mu Yu. After that, he integrated the soul power in his hand into Wild Dark 7 Unique, and white light flourished all over the body of White Snake. Kacha, so close yet worlds apart, only persisted for a moment, then unexpectedly began to show signs of collapse. Cracks crawled all over the golden barrier. Then it collapsed into innumerable fragments. But Muyu didn't panic. He had already condensed cyan-colored 8 trigrams formation under his feet. And at the same time, the green-colored formation patterns on the body of White Snake also began to shine, resonating with the 8 trigrams formation under Muyu's feet. White Snake was already about to break Muyu's formation technique, but suddenly its entire body inexplicably trembled, and its huge body was forcibly straightened, forming a straight line. Nevertheless, its big mouth still bit towards Muyu, but its bloody mouth actually directly penetrated through the black and white barrier, penetrated through the body of Muyu's group, and didn't bite Muyu's group. How can this be? Palace Envoy was greatly surprised. He clearly saw Muyu's group before his eyes, and thought that it was enough to swallow Muyu's group into the belly of White Snake, but he didn't expect that even after the tyrannical White Snake bit through the golden formation patterns, it still didn't bite Muyu. Formation technique, wind, one line. Formation technique, mirror image formation. It's time for us to counterattack. Muyu had already told the plan in his mind to everyone through wind, one heart linking formation. Shimenwuji and Wanwan also stopped. Then looking at each other, they flew towards different direction. Counterattack? You are too naive. Palace Envoy saw that Shimenwuji and Wanwan had already flown towards different direction, and this kind of action was exactly what he wanted. The sky covering Big Snake was already forced to move in a straight line, but this kind of formation technique couldn't restrict it for long. In an instant, he let Big Snake get rid of the formation technique, then simultaneously disappeared from that place, and once again changed into 7 huge snakes, and separately flew towards Shimenwuji's group. If you don't split up, you might still have a chance. But if you split up, you'll die. The Palace Envoy sneered. The giant snake could appear anywhere in his domain. Before Shimenwuji and the others could even stand firm, the giant snake had already appeared behind them and bit down. But in the next moment, the Palace Envoy's smile froze. This was because the giant snake had not bitten Shimenwuji and the others. Whoosh! Gui Tian's sword intent swept out. He seemed to have predicted where the giant snake would attack from. In just a single exchange, the insufferably arrogant giant snake was torn to pieces and turned into nothingness. And Shimenwuji, Wanwan, and Tian Ran also successively beheaded the giant snake that had just appeared. The entire process was clean and efficient, without the slightest bit of sloppiness. How is this possible? Bastard! I'm going to kill you all. The Palace Envoy angrily roared. White's soul force spread out from his body once more, condensing into 7 giant snakes that fell towards them. But at this time, Muyu had already appeared at the very center of the Palace Envoy's domain. The powerful auras of Gu Yiqian and the others had completely gathered on Muyu's body. The endless sword intent in Muyu's hand suddenly exploded and stabbed toward a single point. The Palace Envoy's pupil shrank. That point was the weak point of his entire domain. Any magic technique had a weak point, but the Palace Envoy had hidden his domain ability very well. It was simply impossible for a normal person to sense it. However, he never imagined that Muyu would actually be able to accurately find the weak point of his domain. Bang! The Palace Envoy angrily roared. He could no longer maintain his domain, and it suddenly exploded, dissipating without a trace. He angrily looked at Muyu. To be defeated by a group of crossing Calamity Juniors. This was the disgrace of a great Ascension Realm Master. But he still couldn't understand. With Muyu's cultivation, even if he had discovered the weak point of his domain, it shouldn't have been enough to destroy it. Just how had Muyu accomplished this? The Palace Envoy shifted his gaze to Muyu's Shadow Clone Sword. Suddenly, he was stunned. The tip of the Shadow Clone Sword was actually twined with 2 strange black and white auras. This black and white aura was even more profound than yin and yang. It seemed as if it could swallow all things and destroy everything. Is that life and death aura? You can actually control life and death aura to such a degree? The Palace Envoy actually recognized the true nature of life and death aura. It was clear that he knew how terrifying these things were. At this time, he was no longer looking at Muyu with contempt, but deep shock. In his impression, no one had ever been able to control life and death aura because they were the most primitive forces of the world. They controlled the balance of all things and could not be controlled by anyone. Muyu gasped for breath. He had to admit that the palace envoy was still quite powerful. This sword had gathered the strength of the other four people. If it weren't for the four of them, it would be impossible for Muyu to defeat a Great Ascension Realm envoy with his own strength. However, this sword had almost consumed most of his spiritual power. Although the Great Ascension Realm envoy's domain was broken, he was still a Great Ascension Realm Master after all. There was an insurmountable gap between him and the crossing calamity stage. However, Muyu would not give up. The array patterns on his body surged, and the entire gambling city once again soared with a strong vitality. It soared straight into the sky, causing the palace envoy's face to change. Hateful, just you wait. The next time I meet you, I will definitely kill you. The palace envoy had already retreated. Just now, his soul power was suppressed by the people of Gambling City, and he suffered a little injury. Now that his domain ability was broken, the soul power in his body had been consumed even more. If he didn't leave, he was afraid that he would really die in this place today. I won't give you any chance. Muyu had condensed his sword intent again. The sword intent mixed with vitality was unstoppable as it blasted toward the palace envoy. He was ready to kill the palace envoy when he couldn't resist. However, at this moment, an even more terrifying aura shot from afar. This aura was heavy and powerful, like a giant rolling over, causing Muyu and the others' faces to change again. Another Great Ascension Realm Master. Whoosh! Muyu's condensed sword intent was hit by a white light and disappeared instantly. Palace Envoy, you're a little slow. The Palace Envoy said gloomily. A sacred white shadow appeared beside the Palace Envoy. This person's aura was comparable to the Palace Envoy at his peak. I thought you would get rid of them yourself. I didn't expect you to be beaten so badly. You even lost 2 of your own people. What a disgrace. The Palace Envoy said indifferently. The second Great Ascension Realm Master of the Threefold Palace. Muyu and the others' hearts had sunk to the bottom. They could have killed the Palace Envoy just now, but they didn't expect the reinforcements of the Threefold Palace to come so quickly and save the Palace Envoy. At this time, Muyu and the others' cultivation were at the crossing calamity stage. Even with the help of the Gambling City, they were no match for the Palace Envoy. Stop talking nonsense. Capture them alive for me. I will go back and explain the rest to the Lord. The Palace Envoy retreated to the side in anger. He was the same as Muyu and the others. He didn't have the strength to fight at all. The appearance of the Palace Envoy destroyed the hope of Muyu and the others. It was impossible for them to defeat another Great Ascension Realm Master. What should we do now? Shimen Wuhao asked. Fight. Gu Etian didn't have any thoughts of retreating. We are no match for them. Wan frowned. We still have to fight. Muyu said. Muyu moved his sword. He really didn't have the means to resist another Great Ascension Realm Master. At this time, the situation had been reversed. But in their current state, it was basically impossible for them to escape from the hands of a Great Ascension Realm Master. Then why aren't you obediently waiting to be captured? The Palace Envoy sneered. The terrifying domain ability had already swept out and sealed their surroundings. The domain ability of the Palace Envoy made them unable to resist. Damn it! Muyu clenched his teeth. If his cultivation was higher, he would be able to rely on the Gambling City to fight with the Palace Envoy again. But now he didn't even have the ability to retreat. Just when their heart was feeling incomparably heavy, the domain that was tightly suppressing them suddenly seemed to be torn apart by someone. Then Muyu and the others felt their whole body become light. At the same time, another powerful aura protected them. The third Great Ascension Realm Master. Who is it? The Palace Envoy turned around and stared at the outsider. I think it's not too late for me to come. A gentle but resolute voice came from the sky. This voice was like a ray of light in the darkness, making everyone's mind shake. Muyu turned around and looked at the person. A white robe fluttered in the wind. He was gentle and elegant. An indifferent aura surrounded him. He stood there like a hard wall, making people feel at ease. Chengyan, eldest senior brother, you. Muyu looked at Chengyan in shock. The aura of a great Ascension Realm Master actually came from Chengyan. Chengyan smiled at Muyu. Sorry, when I got the news, I tried my best to rush here. Fortunately, I finally made it. Shimin Wuji, Wan, and the others were also surprised. Chengyan had actually stepped into the Great Ascension Realm. When the Palace Envoy and the Palace Envoy saw Chengyan, they had already put away their contempt. Chengyan's aura was calm and condensed. Even the Palace Envoy at his peak couldn't see through it. Sword Shadow, Chun Feng's eldest disciple, Chengyan, it seems that we have all underestimated you. The Palace Envoy said. Chengyan walked to Muyu's side and put his hand on Muyu's shoulder. A familiar and mellow spirit power entered Muyu's body, helping him recover from his injuries. Are you okay? Chengyan asked. I'm fine, Muyu replied. To be able to force a great Ascension Realm Master to this extent, you have done well. Chengyan smiled. It's a pity that I can't kill him. As long as the Palace Envoy came one step later, I would definitely be able to kill him. Muyu shook his head. Chengyan turned around and looked indifferently at the severely injured palace emissary. He said he won't survive. When the Palace Envoy in the distance heard this sentence, his face changed. However, the Palace Envoy on the side laughed out loud. His eyes were like a poisonous snake as he looked at Chengyan. Chengyan, you have such big words. You want to kill someone in front of me? Have you asked me? Chengyan slowly reached out his hand, and a steady sword appeared in his hand. The sword light was restrained, and not a bit of the sword edge was revealed. It looked ordinary and mediocre. But it was this sword that made everyone feel an indescribable sense of oppression when it cut through the air. I don't need to ask you. Chengyan flicked his wrist, and the tip of his sword suddenly burst open. The surging sword chi was like a river that had burst its banks. It surged out, swallowing up the entire space in the blink of an eye. Everyone felt as if their bodies were being pulled by something. They lost control of their bodies in front of this sword chi. Wong, the heavily injured palace emissary, suddenly widened his eyes. His body was covered with cracks. The sword chi had unknowingly pierced through his head, crushing his soul and destroying his consciousness. Because the people of the third layer palace must die, Chengyan slowly said. Bang! The palace envoy's body exploded, turning into specks of starlight and dissipating in the air. Chapter 1063. Silence. Muyu and the others were shocked by Chengyan's sword. Chengyan's sword was unbelievably fast, so fast that even the other Grand Ascension Stage Palace Captain did not have time to react. Ew, how is this possible? The Palace Captain was shocked and angry, and the arrogant look on his face had already disappeared. He never thought that Chengyan would actually kill the Palace Captain in front of him. In front of him, a dignified Grand Ascension Stage expert. He could not react at all. You also have to die. Chengyan just lightly raised the sword in his hand. The erosion cleansing sword was solid and steady, and instantly formed a vortex in the sky, communicating with the whole world. Whoosh! The third heavenly sword intent poured down from the sky, and compared to Muyu and Tian Ran's joint attack, it was 100 times more tyrannical. The sky seemed to be slightly shaken by this sword. This sword intent was incomparably terrifying, and the brilliant heavenly might was unparalleled in the world. The aura passed down, shook the whole gambling city, as if the whole world could not bear this sword. Not only the palace captain, but even Muyu and the others were shocked. Chengyan was actually powerful to this extent? Soul technique roar. Heaven-conquering tyrant roar. The palace captain's face changed, and a white soul bead appeared around him. The soul bead bloomed with sacred light, and the white light spread out, as if the whole sky was covered with a layer of sacred armor. The white light shone in the sky, and wanted to destroy Chengyan's heavenly sword. The palace captain's domain, heaven-conquering tyrant roar. However, Chengyan's heavenly sword did not move, and the mighty and steady sword Qi slashed down and actually directly tore the tyrannical domain displayed by the palace captain and broke it into thousands of fragments. All the fragments were reassembled by a strange force and condensed into a giant white sword, and in turn, blasted towards the palace captain. The palace captain gritted his teeth and directly turned around, tore the void, and turned into a white light and merged into the void. In just a single exchange, the hall captain wanted to flee. With the dignity of a Deshang stage master, the palace captain felt extremely aggrieved. He thought that when he arrived here under the guidance of the palace envoy, he would be able to capture Mu Yu and the others. But he never expected that a Deshang stage master, Qingyan, would appear. Qingyan's cultivation was even stronger than his, and he killed the palace envoy in front of him. The moment the hall envoy was killed, the hall commander understood that he was no match for Qingyan. If he had chosen to fight instead of running away, he would have been the next to die. He didn't have the courage to fight. He had to escape. However, Qingyan's sword intent had already pierced through and slashed down at the white light in the void. The palace captain's scream came from the white light. An arm flashed out from the white light. The arm glowed with white light, and then the white light gradually dissipated. The arm became incomparably ugly, like the dirty claws of a wild beast. Then it suddenly exploded in the air and turned into powder. Everything returned to tranquility. The heavenly sword in the air had already disappeared, and Qingyan slowly restrained his aura. What a pity! You cut off your arm and ran away. The third layer palace's ability to escape is quite formidable, Qingyan said with some regret. Mu Yu looked at the place where the palace captain had fled. There was another domain fluctuation there, and he already knew what it was. It was just like when the Azure Dragon and the other Monster King sealed their domain abilities in something and gave them to Mu Yu. The palace captain had also used the domain ability given to him by others to escape. Otherwise, Qingyan's sword would have been enough to thoroughly kill him. Shimen Wuji, Wan Wan, and the others bitterly smiled. Qingyan was already powerful to such a degree. Although he hadn't killed the palace captain, Qingyan's heavenly sword had actually caused the palace captain to lose the courage to fight. It was enough to look down on the world. The heavenly sword is truly fierce. Gu Etian silently looked at the three giant swords. He knew that it was impossible for his broadsword to contend against the heavenly sword. However, his eyes revealed an even more powerful fighting spirit. As a body cultivator, he would never stop because of the strength in front of him. He would strive to improve himself and challenge the heavenly sword. Mu Yu and Tian Ran had already retrieved their heavenly sword. The two of them were somewhat tired. Dealing with a great ascension stage person was truly too difficult. However, the palace captain had been killed. No matter how big the price was, it was worth it. The giant snake dissipated, and the dark clouds in the sky also dispersed. The sun once again revealed its radiance, illuminating the entire earth. Senior brother, you came at the right time. Mu Yu looked at Qingyan and said with complicated feelings. After parting in Clearwater City, the few of them had chosen their own paths. However, Qingyan still took on the responsibility of the eldest senior brother. He cultivated to become stronger, looked for his junior brothers, and looked for his master. Now that they met again, Qingyan had already reached the great ascension stage. The eldest senior brother would always be the eldest senior brother. Qingyan looked at Mu Yu gently. The eyes of the two brothers met in an instant. It was so familiar. There was no obstruction. It was as if they had returned to the carefree time of the Luochen Mountain. At that time, Qingyan was still the responsible eldest senior brother, and Mu Yu was the quarreling junior brother. Qingyan asked, "Do you still remember the promise between you and me?" That promise was the promise that Qingyan made to help Mu Yu on the way to the Elixir Cauldron sect. Mu Yu knew what Qingyan was talking about. At that time, Qingyan had been waiting for Mu Yu and his three junior brothers to return home. He helped Mu Yu. In return, he only wanted a golden heavenly heart reincarnation grass from Mu Yu. When a person didn't lose himself, the heavenly heart reincarnation grass would emit a golden light. Mu Yu stretched out his hand. A golden heavenly heart reincarnation grass appeared in his palm. He said softly, "Senior brother, this is what you wanted." The leaves of the heavenly heart reincarnation grass swayed in the sunlight. It looked so pure. It was like a golden sun that warmed people's hearts. Qingyan took the golden heavenly heart reincarnation grass. The golden heavenly heart reincarnation grass shone in his hand as if it was carrying a heavy responsibility. "At least, you're the first one to return home." Qingyan's smile was very gentle. The gamblers in the gambling city were still reveling. However, there were a few people floating in the sky above the gambling city. They had joined forces to deal with the Great Ascension Stage Palace Envoy with their Tribulation Stage cultivation, but they had also expended a lot of energy. Fortunately, Qingyan had arrived at the last moment and killed the Palace Envoy. Otherwise, the Palace Envoy would have definitely escaped from this place. Muyu looked at Qingyan. His senior brother was always so gentle and indifferent. Even if they hadn't seen each other for a long time, his senior brother was still mature and steady. "You're very strong." Gu Yitian looked at Qingyan. His eyes were still filled with a strong fighting spirit. Gu Yitian had always wanted to fight with Qingyan since he went to Mount Fulong to look for Yuman in the Mayan mountain range. However, Qingyan didn't give Gu Yitian a chance. At that time, Gu Yitian's strength was only equivalent to the Foundation Establishment stage, while Qingyan's cultivation was at the Jindan stage. Now that they met again, Qingyan was still one stage stronger than them. "We shouldn't be opponents." Qingyan smiled. Their opponents were not each other, but the third palace. Gu Yitian's fighting spirit did not diminish. "I will challenge you in the future. After we destroy the third palace, if we are still alive at that time, I will give you a chance." Qingyan nodded. Gu Yitian looked at Muyu and said, "I also want to challenge you." Gu Yitian only had eyes for his opponents. "Okay." Muyu nodded. He respected an opponent like Gu Yitian, a person who couldn't cultivate and relied on physical cultivation to reach this point. His perseverance was amazing. Even though Gu Yitian was still not Muyu's opponent, Muyu would never slack off. Gu Yitian would work harder. He wouldn't let Gu Yitian surpass him. Looks like today is the day of celebration in the gambling city. I'm thinking about whether I should ask Dubying to treat today as an anniversary. Shiman Wuji looked at the gamblers below. It was these gamblers who gave them the strength to deal with the palace envoy. "Then I'll name it. I'll name it." I shouted the loudest just now. "Let's call it Xiao Shuai's Gambling Day." Xiao Shuai held two small flags in his hands and waved them happily. Muyu touched his forehead. He felt helpless about Xiao Shuai's shamelessness. They returned to the gambling city. All the gamblers in the gambling city were affected by Muyu's array. They were still partying tirelessly. It was very lively. Boyong Daoren greeted Gu Yitian. He looked at Muyu and the others in awe. "Senior Boyong." Muyu and Qingyan cupped their hands. Boyong Daoren quickly smiled. "I don't dare to be called senior. I didn't expect that after not seeing you for a few years, you would all become so powerful. This old man is just a speck of dust at the bottom of the cultivation world. I don't dare to be called senior." "Senior must be joking. Gu Yitian is our friend. You are Gu Yitian's master. Naturally, you are our senior," Muyu said with a smile. "Yes, when we settled down in the Moyen mountain range, senior helped our master many times. Even if we have become powerful now, we can't forget this seniority," Qingyan said. Boang Daoren also sighed with emotion. Just now, he saw the battle in the sky. It could be said that he had a deep impression. He also understood what kind of powerful existence Muyu and Qingyan were. It was a height that he would never be able to reach in his lifetime. However, Boang Daoren also had his own pride. He looked at the determined Gu Yitian, and his heart was filled with pride. Boang Daoren was only in the Jindan period. However, his disciple could also be so talented. How could he have thought that he would be able to cultivate such a persevering disciple like Gu Yitian? Not to mention that the Falling Dust sect, which was ranked last among the 20 sects in the Mayan mountain range, had hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Their disciples were even more powerful. "Master, I'm sorry to have made you suffer," Gu Yitian said. Boang Daoren patted Gu Yitian's shoulder. "I have become a burden to you." Gu Yitian turned to Muyu and said, If you help me protect my master, I will go with you to deal with the Sanchon Palace. Muyu nodded and said, Don't worry. Right now, there are two safest places in the cultivation world. I will send Senior Boyong to our array sect. The people from the Sanchon Palace can't enter there. Thank you, Gu Etian said. Muyu glanced at the gamblers who were still reveling. The array pattern in his hand appeared. Then, he removed the illusion array on everyone and woke them up from the illusion. After these people woke up, they were all surprised and doubtful. Some of them still wanted to continue and were reluctant to wake up from the dream of making a lot of money. What's going on? Where's my money? Why was it a dream? I just dreamt that I made 10 million. I won every bet just now. My luck was excellent. Many gamblers slapped their thighs and felt that it was a good dream. However, it was only a good dream. Then who won the competition in the arena just now? Right, where are the dirty and despicable people from the Sanchon Palace? Were they defeated? They are so shameless. When I first heard that someone was slandering the Sanchon Palace, I even argued with that person. Now I know that the news was not groundless. Chapter 1064. Dubi Ying had an exquisite and luxurious courtyard. At this moment, Mu Yu and the others were already sitting in the courtyard of this courtyard. The courtyard provided by Dubi Ying was quiet and secluded. Everyone was sitting in different places in the courtyard. Shimin Wu Hao was half lying on a flat stone, and in his hand was a jug of wine, which he was pouring himself. Wan Wan was casually sitting on the water grass beside the small pond. Her feet were in the clear water as she played with the goldfish in the river. There was a banyan tree in the courtyard with a swing hanging from it. Little Handsome was happily sitting on the swing, swinging nonstop. Only he didn't have any worries. Muyu leaned on the tree trunk and stared at Little Handsome's back as he pondered. Tian Ran was sitting on a chair beside Muyu. There was a wooden table in front of her. At this moment, she was holding her chin and curiously sizing up Muyu and Wan Wan. Gu Etian and Boyong Daoren were sitting on one side. Boyong Daoren was still somewhat reserved. Qingyan sat opposite Tian Ran and poured a pot of tea for everyone. After the battle, no one seemed to want to talk. Many things had happened today, and the gambling city was no longer a safe place. Boyong Daoren was already resting in the room of the courtyard. His body was still very weak, and Muyu had already treated him. After Gu Etian settled his master, he walked out of the room and silently sat opposite Qingyan. Qingyan also poured a cup of tea for him. Thank you, Gu Etian simply said. Muyu looked at Shimin Wuji and Wan Wan and said, I didn't expect that you two were actually chaotic yin and yang. Shimin Wuji leisurely drank a mouthful of wine and said with a smile, The old man only fancied me and Wan Wan's physiques, so he sealed the power of yin and yang in our bodies. Originally, we were disinclined to use this power. In any case, Wan Wan has never liked me. Wan Wan's feet swayed in the water, and she smiled. You don't look mature enough. I prefer masculine ones. Shimin Wuji went around the cultivation world to flirt with the young talents of the various sects, and Wan Wan was notorious, but they had never had an accident. Their confidence must have come from the primal chaos yin and yang in their bodies. Xiao Shuai swung high on the swing, holding two small flags in his hands. He asked excitedly, Then which Dao artifact do you belong to? This was also what Muyu wanted to know. Regarding the 9 Dao artifacts, Muyu only knew about the opening ruins cauldron and the array hall. He did not know about the rest. Shimin Wu Cheng and Wan Wan looked at each other. Shimin Wu Cheng said, The old man's Dao artifact is called Xietian. It is a very bloody axe. One axe can suppress heaven and earth and turn everything evil. Unfortunately, it is not here. Not here. Even you guys can't find it? Muyu asked in surprise. Shimin Wuji shrugged his shoulders. Primal chaos yin and yang is only sealed in our bodies. We can use primal chaos yin and yang, but we are not primal chaos yin and yang. That Xietian is in another world. It is suppressing something powerful. Wan Wan and I are the same as the 5 of you. We are people who cannot survive. It is only the primal chaos yin and yang that allows us to survive. This power is very difficult to control. I need to be with Wan to unleash its power. Normally, Wan is not willing to tease other girls with me. I can't do anything about it. Wan glanced at Shimin Wuji and snorted noncommittally. She moved her feet, and the goldfish in the pond scattered and gathered again. You guys are also people who cannot survive. Muyu was a little surprised. The four of them were people who could not survive. He did not expect Shimin Wucheng to be the same. The banyan tree beside Muyu sprouted and formed a wooden chair. He sat down beside Tianran. Qingyan said, "Everyone's physique is divided into yin and yang in addition to the 5 elements. I think Shimin Wucheng, your physique is yang. So in order to survive, you sealed the primal chaos yin and yang in your body, right? Wan's physique is yin, so she sealed the yang energy. When Shimin Wucheng used the primal chaos yin and yang, his body was covered in black light. That was the yin energy, but Wan was the exact opposite. Shimin Wucheng looked at Qingyan with a face full of smiles. I can't hide anything from you. Qingyan, I always thought Luo Shang was very powerful. I never thought you would know even more. Qingyan indifferently said, because Kong and Miao have the same physique as you guys. They also have the primal chaos yin and yang in their bodies. Kong and Miao also have the same? Tianran cried out in surprise. Muyu nodded thoughtfully. Actually, when he first learned that Shimin Wucheng and Wan had the primal chaos yin and yang, he already thought of the troublemakers from the Falling Dust sect. They often cause chaos in the Falling Dust sect. After the two of them left the Moyun mountain range, their cultivation speed was extremely fast. It was very abnormal. He didn't expect Kong and Miao to also have a pair of primal chaos yin and yang. I knew it. Those two definitely have some secrets. Sure enough, they have the primal chaos yin and yang. Even I was fooled. Too bad. Next time I will spank them. Little Shuai waved his little flag and said with dissatisfaction. Little Shuai was usually very close to the primal chaos yin and yang. When he opened the Cauldron of Ruins, he chased after Big Black, Big White, Little Black, and Little White. When he was at the Falling Dust Mountain, he and Kong and Miao went everywhere to cause trouble. However, the primal chaos yin and yang in their bodies were sealed. Not only Little Shuai, even the two of them didn't know about this. Little Shuai jumped onto Muyu's shoulder and said, Muyu, how about you seal Little Black and Little White into the body of a little brat? I will take them to conquer the world. Muyu rubbed Little Shuai's head and helplessly said, I still don't know how to perfectly use the power of primal chaos yin and yang. How do I seal it? Next time you see Kong and Miao, go play with them yourself. Then, Muyu thought of Kong and Miao and asked, Senior brother, what is Master's Dao treasure? Qingyan gently picked up his teacup and took a sip before saying, Master's Dao treasure is a mountain peak. A mountain peak? Muyu frowned. I know, it is the Heaven Birth Reincarnation Peak, right? Little Shuai jumped from Muyu's shoulder back to the swing. This time, Muyu was truly shocked. Heaven Birth Reincarnation Peak. Heaven Birth Reincarnation Seal? Last time, on the Demon Island of the Sea Demon King, they entered the Demon Subduing Pagoda and used the Heaven Birth Reincarnation Peak's cave to return to the past. They also saw Master's image in the pavilion of the Heaven Birth Reincarnation Peak when he was young. Qingyan nodded and said, Muyu, I believe you went to the Demon Island and obtained the Heaven Birth Reincarnation Seal, right? Muyu silently opened his hand. A mountain peak that looked like a paradise appeared in his hand. This mountain peak was very small, like a work of art. It was very exquisite. A waterfall poured down from the top of the mountain. The flowers and trees on the mountain peak were flourishing. It was like a small world with its own rules circulating. One could even see bees and butterflies dancing among the flowers. Halfway up the mountain peak, there was a simple and dignified pavilion. There was a cave on the side, which was the passage back to the past. On the Demon Island, Muyu and Gue Shiming used this passage to return to the past and found the whereabouts of the soul transference. Unfortunately, Without the demon's subduing pagoda to provide powerful spiritual energy, the space-time passage in the cave had been sealed. There was no way to activate it again, even with Mu Yu's current ability. Senior brother, how did you know? Mu Yu never knew that he had accidentally obtained his master's Dao tool. He should have thought of it earlier. Last time, when he entered the Heaven Birth Reincarnation seal, he sat in the pavilion and saw the illusion left behind by his master. At that time, his master was still very young. He didn't know Mu Yu and only told Mu Yu that he was someone who lived in the past. Mu Yu still didn't know what someone who lived in the past meant. He always felt that his master's words had a hidden meaning. Qingyan looked at the exquisite mountain peak in Mu Yu's hand and said, "And Shu told me. I once thought of a way to go to the demon's subduing pagoda, but when I got there, I found that the seed demon king had been born. It had something to do with you." The Heaven Birth Reincarnation peak also disappeared. I thought it was you who took it. Now it seems that it was indeed so. Mu Yu thought of Kong Kong, Meow Meow, and Lan Linger, who went missing in the 50-mile garden in the south. He couldn't wait to ask, "Senior brother, when did you see Shu? Isn't Shu okay? Were Kong Kong, Meow Meow, and Lan Linger taken away by Shu?" Ever since the immortal confinement prison in the Maoyun mountain range was lifted, Shu also mysteriously disappeared. Mu Yu didn't know how Shu was doing now, but he didn't think in a bad direction. Chengyan nodded slightly. 3 months ago, Shu found me and told me that I had to find Master's Dao tool. Shu said that he still had to complete the mission that Master gave him, so he left in a hurry. As for Kong Kong, Meow Meow, and Lan Linger, they should have been taken away by Shu. Mu Yu asked in surprise, "And Shu is going to complete the mission that Master gave him? What mission is that?" Cheng Yin shook his head. "I don't know. He refused to tell me. He said that it was a task given to him by Master and that he had to complete it. I offered to help him, but he asked me to find Master's Dao artifact." Mu Yu said with some worry, "But in Shu's cultivation, senior brother, is in Shu's cultivation. It's during the Jindan period, but he has some means of master. He said that he was enough to deal with some things." I didn't dare to refute Shu's words. "You also know Shu's temper," Qingyan said helplessly. Even if Qingyin's cultivation had now stepped into the Dashang stage, he was still a junior in front of Shu. He would listen to Shu's words. Not only Qingyan, even Mu Yu, if he meant Shu, he would not dare to be too presumptuous. Shu used to be extremely strict with their cultivation and punish them with bad cooking skills. They were still in awe of him. Everyone fell into silence. The pressure given to them by the threefold palace was too great. Even Qingyan could not fight against the entire threefold palace by himself, because the strength of the threefold palace was unfathomable. "I hope Master is still well." Mu Yu silently held Tian Ran's hand. Tian Ran bit her lips and looked gloomy. She hadn't recognized her father until now, not to mention that she didn't even know the whereabouts of her mother. Shimin Wuji said with a hearty smile, "Don't worry, my master and your master disappear at the same time. Although there is no specific information, but I know that whether it is my family's unscrupulous old man or your family's master, both of them are still alive. This is inevitable." Tian Ran was overjoyed and eagerly asked, "Shimin Wuji, is what you said true? Have you seen them?" Chapter 1065. Because the yin and yang chaos did not change owners, Mu Yu said. Chengyan nodded with a serious expression. Although Kong Kong and Meow Meow do not know that the yin and yang chaos power is sealed in their bodies, they have an inexplicable sense of closeness to Master. They both believe that Master is still alive. It was just like the yin and yang chaos of the Pill Cauldron sect had not changed owners. Because Deadwood's soul was protected by the soul-fixing array, he was not truly dead. That was why Mu Yu could not control the yin and yang chaos of the Open Ruins Cauldron. If something happened to Xie Bulo, the yin and yang chaos in Shimin Wuji and Wan Wan's bodies would react. Kong Kong and Meow Meow should know about this as well. Tian Ran excitedly held Mu Yu's hand. She had never truly acknowledged her father. All she wanted was to reunite with her family. "He is still alive." Tian Rant's eyes were filled with tears. Muyu hugged Tian Rant's shoulder tightly and said firmly, "Master will survive. We will save him." "Yes." Tian Ran choked with sobs. Qingyan slowly put down his teacup and said, "Muyu, come with me. I have something to talk to you about in private. Just the two of us. The rest of you have used up a lot of energy in the fight. You should recover first." "Okay." Muyu nodded, and the others did not say anything. The two of them left the yard and went to an empty courtyard. Xiao Shuai ran over, and Qingyan did not stop him. Xiao Shuai was Master's sword spirit. He was not an outsider. "Senior, what is it?" Muyu waved his hand, and two chairs appeared beside him. He sat down with Qingyan. Qingyan was silent for a moment. He looked at Muyu and smiled. "The Gate of Hell and Stargate were destroyed by you?" Muyu nodded and calmly said, "Yes." "Do you know the secret beneath the Gate of Hell?" Qingyan asked again. Muyu said in surprise, "Senior Marshal Brother, you also know about what happened below the Gate of Hell? Did you go there too?" Below the Gate of Hell was a ghost pit where a Gui Zoo was sealed. Ordinary people couldn't enter at all. She didn't expect Qingyan to know about this. Qingyan shook his head. "I don't have to go there to find out. There are many secrets I can learn from other places." "Other places? Senior brother, where have you been all this time?" Muyu remembered that he met Shadowkill Hades at the Gate of Hell. Hades had always wanted to find Qingyan's whereabouts. It seemed that it was because Qingyan had done something that offended the Shadowman organization. Qingyan did not answer Muyu directly. Instead, he said, "Let's not talk about this anymore. You're the only one left now." "I'm the only one left. What do you mean?" Muyu asked puzzledly. Qingyan said slowly, "I've stepped in the Mahayana stage." Muyu was stunned, and then said in surprise, "You mean Luo Shang and Xiangnan?" "Yes, Luo Shang and Xiangnan have become Mahayana stage cultivators. They have field ability," Qingyan said. Muyu was a little embarrassed. He had always thought that his cultivation speed was extremely fast, but compared with his three senior martial brothers, he was still far behind. If his cultivation had not reached the Mahayana stage, it would be very difficult for him to fight with the third palace. Xiao Shuai poked his head out and pretended to be sad. He jumped onto Muyu's shoulder, pulled Muyu's ear, and said in disappointment, "Muyu, you are so disappointing. Look at your three senior martial brothers. They are already at the Mahayana stage, but you are still at the sixth heaven of the crossing tribulation stage. You don't cultivate properly and are always lazy. I've been urging you every day, but you just don't cultivate seriously. Look, you're dragging us down now, aren't you?" Muyu rubbed Xiao Shuai's head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "You talk too much. If you talk more nonsense, I'll sell you to the brothel." "Is there delicious food in the brothel?" Xiao Shuai asked excitedly. Muyu flicked Xiao Shuai's head, feeling a headache coming on. He kept talking about food. Having said that, Muyu didn't think that he would be the only one still stuck at the Tribulation Transcendent stage among his four fellow disciples. It was no wonder that Luo Shang and Xiang Nan were able to destroy the Red Dust sect so easily. It turned out that both of them had reached the Grand Ascension stage. Even 10 Red Dust sects wouldn't be able to resist 2 Grand Ascension stage cultivators. "I will work hard. I won't be a burden to everyone," Muyu said seriously. He did not want to always be protected by his senior brothers. He should also cultivate in seclusion for a period of time, improve his cultivation, comprehend his own domain ability, and step into the Mahayana stage. Qingyan shook his head. "You misunderstood me. This has nothing to do with your cultivation speed. Your cultivation talent is already very strong, and you don't lose to us. It's just that the three of us didn't comprehend our own domain, but Spirit Lord Yu Meng's domain." Muyu asked in confusion, "What's the difference?" "Let's put it this way. If we follow the normal cultivation speed, I'll only be at the crossing tribulation stage now, and I won't step into the Mahayana stage. Luo Shang and Xiang Nan are about the same. The four of us haven't cultivated for long enough. Maybe in 2 more years, we'll be able to step into the Mahayana stage. However, time is limited, at least not now," Qingyan said slowly. "Then how did you step into the Mahayana stage?" Muyu faintly felt that Cheng Yin seemed to have some misgivings. Like Luo Shang and Xiang Nan, I fused with Rush's consciousness and seized all of his strength, Cheng Yin said calmly. Muyu's expression changed slightly. He recalled how Xiang Nan's temperament changed drastically when he fused with Hutu. If Cheng Yin fused with Rushu, wouldn't it mean that Cheng Yin would become like Xiang Nan? So you're no longer the Cheng Yin of the past? Muyu asked in a deep voice. He had returned home, but Cheng Yin had left? Cheng Yin shook his head. I'm different from Xiang Nan and Luo Shang. The two of them fused with Spirit Lord Yumeng and also fused with their consciousness. However, I only fused with Spirit Lord Yumeng's strength, not his consciousness. If he did not fuse with his consciousness, his nature would not be affected by Spirit Lord Yumeng. Muyu asked in surprise, how did you do it? He also had Gomong in his body, so he knew what this meant. Gomong's consciousness could only be suppressed and could not be erased. To a certain extent, they were one. The fused consciousness would also overlap. This was why Xiang Nan was no longer the Xiang Nan of the past. It was because Xiang Nan's thoughts were mixed with Huda's thoughts. I found a way. I obtained a fusion method from the shadowless race and the shadowless race. This is also why I came to find you. Cheng Yin paused for a moment before continuing. I'll help you erase Gomong's consciousness and fuse with his strength to reach the Mahayana stage. Gomong, who was in Muyu's body, suddenly trembled and looked a little frightened. He did not expect Cheng Yin to say such a thing. If such a cultivation technique really existed, Cheng Yin would definitely be able to kill Gomong with his current strength. The fusion method of the shadowless race and the shadowless race. Muyu also sensed Gomong's fear in his body. He felt a little conflicted. Erasing Gomong's consciousness and devouring Gomong's strength seemed to be a matter of course. Chapter 1066. Cheng Yin said, You should know that the Shadowy Man organization is the Shadowy Man race from another world, right? Their cultivation methods all rely on shadows. In fact, the body of the Shadowy Man race is a shadow, and the people of the Shadowy Man race are people who have lost their shadows. People who have lost their shadows? Muyu felt that this matter was really novel. He didn't expect that the Shadowy Man race and the Shadowy Man race had such a strange relationship. But then he remembered the battle with Shadow Killer Qingming and said, But I remember that Shadow Killer Qingming was a person. At that time, I knocked down his shadow and revealed his body. In Qingshui City, Muyu killed Shadow Killer Qingming, who was at the spirit severing stage. At that time, he saw Qingming's true body. That's a person wrapped in shadows. Shadows can't move alone, so they will control a main body so that they can move freely. However, light is fatal to them, Cheng Yin explained. Muyu was very interested in the relationship between the Shadowy Man race and the Shadowy Man race because it was too strange to let the shadows separate. He had already seen how to use shadows to kill people. Last time, Master Lu told him that the Shadowy Man organization had always wanted to kill the Shadowy Man race. Why? Muyu asked. The Shadowy Man organization and the Shadowy Man organization seemed to be enemies. How did their conflict come about? Xiao Shui interrupted. I guess it's because the shadows want to turn over and become the master, right? More or less. They were originally one and came from the same race. They were all normal humans, but because they cultivated a powerful cultivation method, they separated from their shadows. As long as a normal human cultivates this cultivation method, it will cause the shadow to separate from their body. There's no way to stop it, and the shadow also has its own consciousness. At this time, there will be a war. If the main body has the upper hand, the main body will kill the conscious shadow and become a shadowy man. If the shadow has the upper hand, it will control the main body and become a shadowy man. The Shadowy Man race believes that the shadows are supreme, while the Shadowy Man race believes that the main body of the human is supreme. The two have different beliefs, so there is constant friction between them. The people of the Shadowless clan, whether it was by Yetian, Shangguanlin, or Murong Yun, whom Muyu had seen before, none of them had shadows. They were normal cultivators who had cultivated a mysterious technique and killed their own shadows. Whether it was Shadowkill Mingqing or Shadowkill Huangquan, they were all shadows. They were shadows that had cultivated their own consciousness and controlled their own bodies, becoming another race. Qingyan's words made Mu Yu feel somewhat incredulous. There were all sorts of strange things in the Great Thousand Worlds. Even a shadow could become a spirit. It was indeed amazing. He glanced at his own shadow and felt that it was a very happy thing that his shadow was obediently following him and didn't have to turn against him. Then how did these two races develop? How do they train their own people? Mu Yu asked. Is that important? Qingyan asked. I'm just curious. Mu Yu shrugged his shoulders. Qingyan thought for a moment and said, my current guess is that the two races should each find a talented cultivator and let the cultivator cultivate this technique. When the technique is completed, the shadow will have its own consciousness and will have its own cultivation. At this time, the people of the Shadowless clan will have their elders help to kill their own shadows and become people without shadows. When the people of the Shadowless clan reach the completion of this technique, they will let the shadow control the main body with the help of their elders, so that the shadow will take the initiative. It's that simple. Mu Yu suddenly understood. It sounded similar to the technique of the Gate of Hell and the Gate of Life and Death, but the people of the Gate of Hell and the Gate of Life and Death killed another twin who had cultivated since childhood and controlled the other's soul or body, while the Shadowless clan and the Shadowless clan killed the shadow and the main body respectively. Xiao Shui asked curiously, is this technique very powerful? It can actually make the shadow gain consciousness. Is the name of the Shadowless being enough of a deterrent? Qingyan asked rhetorically. The Shadowless being was the most mysterious organization in the cultivation world. It was very elusive and specialized in assassination. Anyone who was targeted by the Shadowless being would almost certainly die. This was because if the Shadowless being wanted to take on a mission, they would definitely send out people who could guarantee success. So far, except for Mu Yu and Qingyan, who could kill the Shadowless being, no one else in the cultivation world had escaped from the Shadowless being. The missions of the Shadowless being were also divided into different levels. Many of the difficult missions were very expensive, and ordinary people could not hire them at all. The name of the Shadowless being was enough to shock many people. If the shadow who cultivated the Shadowless being was so powerful, needless to say, the people of the Shadowless clan who also cultivated this powerful technique were very powerful. Relatively speaking, the people of the Shadowless clan were just relatively low-key. The cultivation world only knew about the fierce name of the Shadowless being, but not the existence of the Shadowless clan. Mu Yu asked, then the fusion technique you mentioned refers to this technique can separate the shadow and the body, which means that the shadow and the body can be fused. When the shadow and the body want to fuse, one of the consciousness must be erased, and this fusion technique can also be used on us. Qingyan said, so that's how it is. Then how did you get their fusion technique? Mu Yu couldn't help but admire Qingyan's ability. Such a powerful technique must belong to the absolute secret of the two clans. He didn't expect that Qingyan could even get the fusion technique of the two clans. Qingyan continued, last time, the Shadowless being Winter Solstice was looking for my whereabouts. It should be a mission given to him by someone. So I killed the Shadowless being Winter Solstice on the way and sneaked into the Shadowless being organization with the identity of Shadowless being and obtained the secrets of the two clans. After a pause, Qingyan looked at Mu Yu with a smile. I also learned that the Soul Race wanted to control Yumon to destroy a few cities. Some of the people of the Gate of Hell also happened to meet you in Chun'an City. Mu Yu remembered what happened that night. Snow Eagle used the shadow technique to nail all the people of the Gate of Hell in the ruins. It turned out that it was Qingyan who did it. At that time, I wanted to come out to see you, but I found that you were already affected by the killing power. I knew that even if I came out, I wouldn't be able to persuade you to turn back. But I knew that you were going to the Elixir sect, so I followed you. And then, Mu Yu asked, after I made an agreement with you, I went to the Shadowless clan and tried to get the fusion technique from them, but the Shadowless being organization and the Shadowless clan both discover my intentions. Mu Yu nodded slightly. So Shadow Killer Huang Quan came to kill you? When Shadow Killer Huang Quan was at the gate of hell, he wanted to force Mu Yu to tell him Qing Yin's whereabouts, but he didn't succeed. At that time, he had always thought that Huang Quan was obviously from the gate of hell, so why did he suddenly become a shadow killer? It must be because the Shadowless Being clan let Elder Huang Quan of the gate of hell cultivate this technique, allowing the shadow to take the initiative and become the spy of the Shadowless Being clan in the gate of hell. Qing Yin said indifferently, I've already dealt with Huang Quan. He came to find me purely to court death. However, the fusion technique is a top secret for the two races. Originally, the shadow and the main body have different beliefs, so the fusion technique is equivalent to a disgrace. So, it is impossible for this technique to be leaked. I think the two races want to kill me now. After all, I have violated their taboo. When Qing Yin said this, he had always been calm. There were two powerful races chasing after him, but he wasn't afraid at all. Although Qing Yin didn't say in detail how he sneaked into the Shadowless clan and the Shadowless Being organization, Qing Yin must have experienced a lot of difficulties. Mu Yu always thought that the troubles he caused were already shocking, but he didn't expect that Qing Yin's troubles were no less than his. Now that he thought about it, it seemed that the four of them were all troublemakers. Wherever Mu Yu went, there would be a lot of people looking for trouble with him. The Gate of Hell, Stargate, and the Sanchong Palace couldn't wait to capture him. Xiang Nan directly controlled 100,000 self-cultivators, and Qing Yin directly provoked the two mysterious races. It seemed that Luo Shang was the most obedient one among them. But Mu Yu didn't believe that Luo Shang, who was always in a rush, would be obedient. Last time, when Luo Shang was in Dongsha City, he sneaked into the Yuman's territory and found out that the Yuman was going to massacre the city, which caused Yuman to attack the city in advance. Not to mention, he even joined forces with Xiang Nan to raise the Red Dust sect to the ground. Mu Yu felt that he was quite innocent. He also wanted to be a good kid, but the problem was that he couldn't do it. Senior brother, how do you know about these things? The secrets of the Shadowless clan and the Shadowless clan? Since the fusion technique is their top secret, they shouldn't have leaked it casually, right? Mu Yu asked. Before Master went missing, he left a message at Mount Luochen. I learned about it from it. This was originally a method that he had been researching. After using the 9 Heavens Demon Sealing Formation to seal Spirit Lord Yu Meng in our bodies, he was worried that something would happen to Xiang Nan, so he thought about how to let the 5 of us get rid of Spirit Lord Yu Meng once and for all and become normal people. When he returned to Mayan Mountain, he thought of this method. Unfortunately, he didn't have time to tell us and only left a message. The last time I went back, I happened to find this message. Because no one had tried this method before, I was considered Master's first test subject and also a very successful one. Qing Yin's words touched Mu Yu's heart. It turned out that Master had always wanted them to be normal people. He painstakingly set up the 9 Heavens Demon Sealing Formation to help them suppress Spirit Lord Yu Meng, and even thought of this method to help them fuse with Spirit Lord Yu Meng in their bodies. It was a pity that Master, who always thought of them, was now in danger. These two clans used to come from other worlds, but now many of their clansmen are third heaven cultivators. In a way, they are like mixed-race clans. Now that the Soul clan wants to control the third heaven, and the Shadowless clan and the Shadowless clan want to stay out of it. They don't want to be enemies with the Soul clan, and they also don't want to interfere with the matters of the third heaven. So to me, one more enemy doesn't make a difference. If they want to cause trouble for me, they can come. As long as they stop me from saving my family, I will kill them. Qing Yin said indifferently. In his heart, everyone in Mount Luochun was his family. As the eldest senior brother of Mount Luochun, he had to take on the responsibility of a senior brother. For his family, he could become enemies with the entire cultivation world. Mu Yu smiled slightly. This was also his intention. Back then, when Shangwan Lin of the Shadowless clan faced Mu Yu, he put on an expression as if he knew everything, and Mu Yu ruthlessly humiliated him. To Mu Yu, it didn't matter even if he killed Shangwan Lin. He had enough trouble, and 2 mixed-race clans didn't make a difference. Chapter 1067. So, are you ready to fuse? I can't do anything about Xiang Nan and Luo Shang because they didn't destroy Spirit Lord Yu Meng's consciousness before fusing. Although their strength has reached the Great Ascension stage, they have become somewhat extreme. You haven't fused completely yet. I can help you. Nothing will go wrong with me around, Qingyan said. Gomong began to panic in Mu Yu's body. If the fusion technique was real, with Mu Yu's current cultivation and Qingyan's help, he would undoubtedly die. The five-spirit Lord Yu Meng reincarnated in Mu Yu and the others. In fact, they were equivalent to one. It was just that their consciousnesses existed separately, and Mu Yu and the others held the initiative. You want to obliterate me? Gomong's voice sounded somewhat angry. You've always wanted to take over my body, haven't you? Mu Yu calmly responded. Gomong looked very angry, but he couldn't refute. Mu Yu felt Gomong's panic. He smiled and shook his head. Forget it. Forget it? Gomong was stunned. Forget it? Qingyan frowned. He saved Tian Rant's life and helped me a little, Mu Yu said. Gomong was stunned. He didn't expect Mu Yu to choose to give up at this time. If Qingyan really helped Mu Yu fuse, Gomong would no longer exist. Mu Yu would also have Gomong's strength and become a Great Ascension stage cultivator. He would also have a domain ability to decide life and death in the blink of an eye. But Mu Yu chose to forget it this time. Qingyan thoughtfully asked, Will Spirit Lord Yu Meng in your body help you? Mu Yu looked at Gomong with interest in his consciousness and said, You can be considered half a good thing. Gomong snorted angrily. Mu Yu gave a brief account of what had happened between him and Gomong, but omitted the part about his deal with Gomong. Qingyan smiled and said, Spirit Lord Yu Meng has been threatening to take over my body, so I don't feel guilty at all when I erased his consciousness. Since the Gomong in your body is half a good thing, it's fine if you don't want to erase his consciousness. Senior brother, I thought you were going to persuade me to fuse, Mu Yu said with some surprise. At present, only by the fusion could Mu Yu, like his three senior brothers, break through to the Deshang stage as soon as possible, and he would be more confident in dealing with the three-layered palace. Qingyan shook his head. Fusion means that the domain ability you comprehend will be the same as Spirit Lord Yu Meng's. If you rely on your own domain ability to step into the Grand Ascension stage, with our talent, we may be able to comprehend a more powerful domain ability. There are pros and cons to this matter. The domain ability of the five spirit lords Yu Meng is already very powerful, but it's not yours. If Mu Yu wanted to use the life and death blink ability now, he still needed to get Gomong's consent. After all, this domain ability was not his. Moreover, using this domain ability with the cultivation of the crossing calamity stage would consume a lot of his spiritual power, and it was very unstable. Once it did not hit the opponent, his spiritual power would be empty. Therefore, Mu Yu had not used it when dealing with Ghost Cold and the Palace Envoy. Mu Yu pondered for a moment and said, Does this mean that if I step into the Grand Ascension stage on my own, I will comprehend my own domain ability, and with Spirit Lord Yu Meng, I will have two domains? Qingyan nodded. Yes, this is why I don't intend to force you to fuse. Since you can coexist peacefully with Gomong, there is no need to erase his consciousness. Comprehending your own domain ability is more important than seizing someone else's domain ability. Mu Yu thought of Qiao Shui. The mysterious underworld in Qiao Shui's body had always been tempting Qiao Shui. Back in the Nine Heavens sealing demon formation, it had interfered with everyone and almost caused the formation to fail. If Mu Yu did not choose to cultivate the Shadowless clans and Shadowless clans cultivation techniques now, he could give this cultivation technique to Qiao Shui. Then, senior brother, what is your domain ability? Mu Yu asked curiously. Qingyan smiled and said, Universe Origin Pursuit. What ability is that? I didn't see you use this domain envoy to deal with him, Mu Yu said. Qingyan stretched out his hand and moved his fingertips slightly. A few rustling sounds suddenly came from the ground, and a few bright spheres condensed from metal revolved around his hand. These hard spheres were constantly changing shape. He was silent for a long time, then shook his head and said, I don't like this domain ability. It's very strong, but in the end, it's not mine. Whoosh! All the soil, stone slabs, fallen leaves, flower pots, and other things in the surroundings all rushed toward the metal in Qingyin's hand. It was as if they were attracted by the metal in his hand, and with the metal as the center, they swayed and rotated. Muyu looked at the weeping willow in the courtyard in surprise. All the willow branches that were originally hanging down were also attracted to Qingyan. "You can attract everything?" Muyu said in surprise. Qingyan said, "Within the range of my domain ability, the movement of all things will be affected by the universe origin pursuit. Not only can it attract things, but it can also repel them. This includes the opponent's spells and even the cultivator themselves. They will all be affected and controlled by me." Qingyan waved his hand again, and the things that were attracted to him were all repelled by a powerful force and scattered back to their original positions. Muyu nodded thoughtfully and said, "This domain ability is really powerful. It can almost control all things." For example, Muyu could control trees, Luo Shang could control flames, Xiang Nin could control sand and stones, and Xiao Shui could control water tides and ice cones. If they attacked Qingyan, the trees, flames, sand and stones, water tides, ice cones, and other things would all be controlled by Qingyan within Qingyan's domain ability. Although Qingyan couldn't change the shape of the trees and flames, he could control their attack trajectory. If a weak cultivator entered Qingyan's domain ability, their body would be restricted. Just this point alone was very powerful, not to mention when facing other cultivators. The cultivator's spells and flying swords would be controlled by Qingyan in the process of flying toward Qingyan. They couldn't hurt Qingyan at all. "Wow, then aren't you more powerful than a magnet?" Little Shui made a fuss at the side. Qingyan shook his head. "No matter how powerful the domain ability is, it doesn't belong to me. I prefer to use the sky sword that Master gave us because the sky sword is our foundation. Moreover, there is no absolute powerful spell in this world, so my domain ability can also be broken. Even the sky sword has restrictions. I think Muyu should be clear about this." Muyu had used the sky sword to fight enemies more than once or twice. Once there was a powerful array that isolated the sky sword's aura from the sky sword. The sky sword couldn't communicate with the heaven and earth and unleash its power. Therefore, for Muyu and the others, if they wanted to use the sky sword, they had to do it in an open area. They couldn't use it in the ghost array of the gate of hell or in the dark and narrow underground. Entering the city was also a very dangerous move. Muyu had been trapped by the people of the threefold palace more than once. Last time, when he was in Chun'an City, he and Tian Ran almost died. Therefore, he understood the flaws of the sky sword. Muyu couldn't help but fall into deep thought. From another perspective, life and death in the blink of an eye was also very powerful. However, just as Qingyan said, Muyu was more inclined to comprehend the domain ability on his own, rather than relying on Spirit, Lord Yu Meng's domain ability. The difference between you and the three of us is that you have learned Master's array techniques. Master's array techniques are extremely powerful. If you can grasp the essence of it, you can completely inherit Master's legacy. Since Spirit, Lord Yu Meng in your body, is more obedient, I hope that you can rely on yourself to comprehend your own domain ability, Qingyan said in a deep voice. Whether it was Qingyan, Luo Shang, or Xiang Nan, they had only learned Master's sword techniques, but not his array techniques. Muyu, on the other hand, was the opposite. He was now the leader of the array glyph sect. His array techniques were extremely exquisite, almost catching up to his master's. Muyu nodded and said, "I know. I will comprehend the domain ability on my own." Now, he didn't just possess the life and death in the blink of an eye ability. He also had the chaotic yin and yang of the array hall. There was a powerful array technique domain ability in the array hall. He could control all the array techniques and talisman techniques in the domain ability. This also meant that in the future, if he were to fight with Bai Jie, who was powerful in array techniques, Muyu would have the advantage. Qingyan smiled and said, "It's good that you understand." After Qingyan left, Muyu was still sitting in the courtyard. He had already obtained the fusion technique that Qingyan had risked his life to obtain from the Shadowless clan, and the Shadowless clan. This fusion technique was called Forbidden Shadow by the Shadowless clan and the Shadowless clan. The technique that the Shadowless clan and the Shadowless clan cultivated was called Upper Shadow Art. The Upper Shadow Art had a total of 9 levels. When cultivating to the 3rd level, it would cause the shadow and the body to separate. Resuscitation of a shadow's consciousness was called Shadow Opening. The 9th level was called Shadow Fusion. It required the shadow to have its consciousness fused back into the body. The person who created the Upper Shadow Art originally planned to separate the shadow and the body, forming 2 consciousnesses and cultivating them separately. Then, when they cultivated to the 9th level, they would perform shadow fusion. They would combine the cultivation of the shadow and the body into one body. With the 2 added together, the cultivation time would be shortened and the cultivation would rise to another level. However, after the later generations cultivated the Upper Shadow Art and allowed the shadow to have its consciousness, it wouldn't be willing to return to the body. This was because the shadow also believed that it had the right to live and refused to fuse with the body. If the body and the shadow had different opinions and wanted to complete the final step of shadow fusion, they would have to kill the shadow's consciousness. This was very difficult to do. Sometimes, if the shadow's cultivation was too strong, the body would be killed. Therefore, whether it was the Shadowless clan or the Shadowless clan, they didn't dare to try shadow fusion. Since ancient times, no one had cultivated the Upper Shadow Art to the 9th level perfectly. Therefore, the 9th level of shadow fusion was also called Forbidden Shadow. At this time, the chant for this fusion technique was recorded in a piece of black metal. Muyu was carefully studying this chant. As the eldest senior brother, Qingyin's methods were very powerful. He actually obtained the chant for the 1st to 9th level of the Upper Shadow Art. No wonder the Shadowless clan and the Shadowless clan hated Qingyin so much. The Upper Shadow Art was the cultivation method of the Shadowless clan and the Shadowless clan. Now that it was stolen by Qingyin, it would be strange if the Shadowless clan and the Shadowless clan weren't angry. The cultivation methods of the Shadowless clan and the Shadowless clan are truly strange. Muyu carefully looked at the chant of the Upper Shadow Art. If the Upper Shadow Art was cultivated normally from shadow opening to shadow fusion, it was equivalent to splitting one person into 2 to cultivate. In the end, the 2 people would reunite and become one person. At this time, it wasn't as simple as 1 + 1. After shadow fusion, the cultivator would experience a qualitative leap, far surpassing the cultivation of the shadow and the body combined. Chapter 1068. Muyu, why don't you practice shadow art? Maybe your shadow will be more obedient, Xiao Shuai suggested. Muyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If my shadow was that obedient, there probably wouldn't be a mysterious race like the silhouette being. Xiao Shuai said with some regret. I wanted to see if your shadow would be more handsome. Muyu couldn't help but look at the shadow under his feet. It looked so dumb. Then he knocked Xiao Shuai's head and said, Stop fooling around. I'm more handsome than my shadow. The 9th level of shadow art actually had little to do with the first 8 levels, because the main problem of shadow fusion was to solve was the shadow. Killing the consciousness of a shadow was enough. It was just like the difference between Muyu and the other 4 and Spirit Lord Yumeng. Spirit Lord Yumeng and the 5 of them were one. It was just that one body had 2 consciousnesses. Then we can only let Xiao Shui cultivate the 9th level of shadow art and kill Spirit Lord Yumeng. Xiao Shui said. Muyu shook his head and said, There are still requirements to cultivate the 9th level. It's not that simple, but I will help Xiao Shui use shadow fusion on her. After a long silence, Gomong suddenly said, You really won't kill me? Muyu said indifferently, I'm not a treacherous person. At that time, in order to save Tian Ran, Muyu made an agreement with Gomong. In fact, this agreement didn't bind Muyu at all. If Muyu wanted to go back on his word, Gomong wouldn't be able to stop him. But Muyu didn't want to do that. Gomong said with a strange tone, I always thought that the human race was a race that was afraid of death. But you are very special. different from what I imagined. I thought you had realized this long ago. Muyu put away the metal stone that Changyan gave him. He didn't need it, but he could give it to Qiao Shui in the future. But you have to kill Xianming, Gomong continued. Muyu replied coldly, I have only made a deal with you. I have never made a deal with Xianming. There was a strange connection between Muyu and Shui Yamen. Muyu was very familiar with this because his relationship with Qiao Shui originated from Shui Yamen. Gomong shook his head and said, You have misunderstood. Mu Yameng and Shui Yameng have always complemented each other. Cultivating together would result in twice the result with half the effort. However, it does not mean that I like Xianming. We are only in a cooperative relationship. However, if she dies, I will indeed feel some regret. Do you think I'll believe you? Muyu replied indifferently. Gomong pondered for a moment and said, I only want to tell you one thing. Back then, you always thought that you liked Qiao Shui because of my relationship with Xianming. But in reality, whether you like her or not has nothing to do with us. Qiao Shui liking you is her own choice. The same goes for you. Muyu frowned. His relationship with Qiao Shui was not caused by Gomong and Xianming. So you two are in love with each other? Little Shui leaned on Muyu's shoulder and eavesdropped on their conversation. Muyu took a deep breath and asked, What are you trying to say? If you die in the future to revive withered tree evergreen, I will help you secretly protect Qiao Shui and Tianran. Consider it my gratitude for not killing you, Gomong said unwillingly. Many thanks. Muyu sighed in his heart. He wasn't afraid of death, but he was afraid that he would let down Qiao Shui and Tianran. If Gomong could survive with the help of Red Lotus, then with Gomong's help, Tianran and Qiao Shui's safety would be guaranteed. No need. I should be the one thanking you, Gomong said and didn't say anything else. The despicable actions of the threefold palace's people in the gambling city had been spread through the mouths of the gamblers. The prestige of the threefold palace in the cultivation world had begun to collapse. 3 of the 8 gates had been destroyed. All kinds of negative news kept spreading. At this moment, the cultivators didn't know who to believe. The threefold palace that was shrouded in a divine white light emitted a chilling aura at this moment. Palace emissary is dead. Bai Jie's tone was calm, but it contained a monstrous anger. The soul race people that were prostrating at his feet trembled and didn't dare to speak loudly. Incapable of accomplishing anything, a bunch of trash. Bai Jie sat on the high throne and coldly looked at the people below. The palace guard with the severed arm was prostrating on the ground and trembling. He was supposed to save the palace emissary, but he didn't expect that not only did he not complete his mission, he also almost lost his life. His arm could no longer grow back. Even if he had more soul power, it was useless because it was cut off by Cheng Yin, who was at the Deshang stage. The vitality of the wound had been completely destroyed by Cheng Yin, and his strength had been greatly damaged. Master, the cultivation world has begun to have doubts about the threefold palace and the 8 gates. All of this is Muyu's doing. Please let me personally go and capture Muyu. A mighty and tall figure stood out. This person was like a war god. The aura on his body was much stronger than the palace emissary. Anyone who saw such a person would feel reverence. However, with Bai Jie sitting there, even this war god had to lower his head. Bai Jie coldly laughed. Capturing Muyu is a must. Not only Muyu, but all 5 of them must die. In the past, we needed to ensure that the cultivators lived in our faith, but now, it doesn't matter if the cultivators believe in us or not. The plan has already reached its final stage. I want to see how big of a wave Muyu and the others can cause. The entire Golden Palace was solemn and sacred, waiting for Bai Jie's words. Bai Jie's fingertips lightly tapped on the armrest of the throne, making a light sound. This light sound echoed in the palace and was very clear. After a while, Bai Jie opened his mouth. I will leave for a while. The threefold palace has been protected by Sword Shadow and Chun Feng for so long, and we have finally found a weakness. I will destroy the final defense. In the time that I am gone, no matter what you do, remember that a place with a lot of people is fatal to us. The palace emissary died because of his own stupidity and arrogance. Now, that Muyu knows how to use the emotions of the cultivators to fight against us, I don't want to see any more stupid things happen. Yes, all the kneeling soul race, people replied respectfully. The opening of the extreme immortal monument cannot be delayed. Before I return, everything here will be under the command of Han Kuei. Remember, at least one of the 9 mystic immortals of the extreme immortal monument must be under our control. Bai Jie said. The war god like Han Kuei respectfully said, "This subordinate will not disappoint Master." Another soul race person below said, "Master, why don't we just kill all the cultivators? With our current strength, it is more than enough to slaughter the entire threefold palace." Idiot, do you think this world is so simple? If the threefold palace could be so easily slaughtered by us, then it would have ceased to exist 5,000 years ago. How can you look down on Jianing and Chunfeng's methods? Bai Jie coldly said. This subordinate knows his mistake. The soul race person who made the suggestion trembled on the ground and did not dare to say anything else. In short, all of you remember, before I completely break through Jianing and Chunfeng's defenses, you can't go and slaughter the cities. Otherwise, all of your previous efforts will be wasted. Their lives will be taken by us sooner or later. There is no need to rush. However, Han Kuei, you should know what to do next. Han Kuei said, "This subordinate understands." Bai Jie stood up and took a step into the void. A sacred white light flashed, and he disappeared from the palace. The threefold palace's landscape was very unique. Overlooking the earth from the sky, it was very pleasing to the eyes. Currently, the Array faction was one of the safest places in the cultivation world. As the sect master, Zhuge Xiaosheng and village chief Old Bu had been discussing how to deal with the current situation. The threefold palace seems to have disappeared. Now, even Yaman has stopped invading the major cities. This is really strange. Zhuge Xiaosheng looked at the map in the Array Palace and analyzed the information gathered from the other cities. He was a bit confused. Village chief Old Bu stroked his beard and pondered for a long time before slowly saying, "I think the threefold palace is preparing to carry out some plans." They must have had a special purpose when they had Yaman fight with the human race. Now that they have achieved their goal, they don't need to rely on war to create soul power. What do you mean? What other purpose does the threefold palace have? Zhuge Xiaosheng asked. Village chief Old Bu shook his head. "I don't know for now, but I feel that the real war is about to begin. Then the chaos in the cultivation world is just a cover for the threefold palace?" Zhuge Xiaosheng was shocked. Village chief Old Bu nodded with a serious expression. Now that Yaman has disappeared, the cultivation world has temporarily returned to peace. However, I think this is just the calm before the storm. The threefold palace values the 9 Xian immortals. I think they don't necessarily need to control all 9 Xian immortals. They only need to control 1 or 2. The situation isn't optimistic. If I'm not wrong, the top 5 on the extreme immortal ranking are at least Great Ascension Stage. Zhuge Xiaosheng was shocked. Great Ascension Stage? Doesn't that mean we have no chance at all? Right now, Muyu is only at 6th sky of Tribulation Passing Stage. Even if Muyu was at 9th sky of Tribulation Passing Stage, he had no chance of winning against a Great Ascension Stage cultivator. If Village Chief Old Bu's guess was right, the threefold palace only needed to control 1 Xian immortal spot. The situation is like this right now. The 9 Xian immortals can work together to control the heavenly hung power, but if one of them doesn't work together, then they won't be able to control the heavenly hung power. The heavenly hung power is the strongest power in the threefold palace. The only threat to the threefold palace's plan should be the heavenly hung power. Therefore, they only need to control 1 Xian immortal spot and make the heavenly hung power useless. What we need to consider now is what the threefold palace's real plan is. Village Chief Old Bu said. Village Chief Old Bu faintly felt uneasy. He was guessing the threefold palace's intentions based on their actions. This was a tactical game. Village Chief Old Bu never underestimated his opponents. But at least Muyu told us how to deal with the threefold palace's soul power. Right now, We've spread this news to all the cities. If those self-cultivators are smart, they'll know that unity is the best weapon against the threefold palace. Village Chief Olbu said. Chapter 1069. Inside the Array sect, there were mountains of all sizes. The terrain was very complicated. Two exquisite huts stood on the hillside, surrounded by simple facilities. A graceful figure sat on a rock on the hillside, staring at the river at the foot of the mountain in a daze. Qingmei, are you thinking about him again? The Qingsong Taoist walked over and sat beside his daughter. Father. Qingmei looked lost. The Qingsong Taoist sighed slightly. Qingyan had left for a long time. In order not to be a burden to Qingyan, Qingmei had been working hard on her cultivation. However, when she was not cultivating, she would always stare at a certain place in a daze. Her mind was filled with that man's figure. Qingyan has a special ability. You should be fine. The Qingsong Taoist comforted her. In fact, from the beginning, the Qingsong Taoist knew that they were trying to climb up the social ladder with Qingyan. Qingyan was a dragon among men. When they were at the Mayan mountain range, he had been hiding his strength. When Qingyan was rumored to be Spirit Lord Jin Yameng, the Qingsong Taoist finally understood how terrifying his son-in-law's identity was. The Qingsong Taoist had always been worried about his daughter. After all, they were not on the same level as Qingyan. In front of Qingyan, their cultivation was not worth mentioning. Father, does he not want me anymore? Qingmei lowered her head and asked while biting her lips. The Qingsong Taoist sighed secretly. If Qingyan abandoned Qingmei, he could not blame Qingyan. His son-in-law was too powerful. The Qingsong Taoist did not dare to speak loudly in front of his son-in-law. Father doesn't know. His world is different from ours. But no matter what, Father will protect you well. The Qingsong Taoist did not dare to promise his daughter anything. Perhaps it was a mistake to agree to this marriage from the beginning. At that time, although he knew that Qingyan was a young man with great potential, the Qingsong Taoist never thought that Qingyan's potential was so great that he could stand at the top of the cultivation world and be an enemy of the entire cultivation world. The higher a person stood, the further they could see, and their thoughts would change accordingly. If Qingyan had a change of heart, there was nothing the Qingsong Taoist could do, because the father and daughter had no ability to change it. He told me that he would treat me well for the rest of his life, but he chose to leave quietly and hasn't returned in all these years. I don't know what I've done wrong. I've tried my best to catch up with him. If he doesn't want me, I only hope that he can make things clear. But he didn't say anything. Qingmei's tears had already rolled down and dripped onto the stone, blooming into tears. The Qingsong Taoist put his arm around his daughter's shoulder and said, Although I'm not his opponent, if Qingyan is a heartless man, I'll ask him for an explanation even if I have to risk my life. In the past, the Qingsong Taoist gave up everything for his daughter and compromised with Luo Shan. His daughter was irreplaceable in his heart. Father, I want to be alone for a while, Qingmei said. Okay, then Father will go back first. The Qingsong Taoist touched Qingmei's shoulder and stood up. But at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in front of them. Qingmei, father-in-law, Qingyan said softly. Qingmei's body shook violently. She raised her head in disbelief and saw the man who had been in her dreams. She was stunned. She had imagined countless times in her mind the scene of her meeting with Qingyan. She wanted to throw herself into his arms, hug him tightly, and never let go. She wanted to tell him how much she worried about him. She had too many things she wanted to tell this young man in front of her. She had missed him day and night. Now, they could finally meet. But the moment they met, Qingmei suddenly shrank back. She felt a trace of panic in her heart. What if he was no longer the same man? What if he had a change of heart? Could she bear all of this? Qingmei suddenly turned around and left. She had been thinking about that person all this time, but she didn't dare to think about whether the person she loved had changed. She would rather keep a trace of hope than hear those words that would break her heart. Just like that time in the Mayan mountains, Qingyan had gritted his teeth and said those irresponsible words to her for her master. Qingmei was afraid to hear it a second time. Qingmei, wait! Qingyan shouted urgently. But the Qingsong Taoist at the side suddenly had courage from who knew where. He walked forward and grabbed Qingyan's collar. In a low voice, he said, "Qingyan, I'm warning you. If you don't like my daughter, you'd better make things clear. Don't let my daughter wash her face with tears all day. I know our status is low and we can't reach your level, but don't play with Qing Mei's feelings." Qingyan was grabbed by the Qingsong Taoist collar, but he didn't resist. Even though he could take the Qingsong Taoist's life with just a thought, he lowered his attitude and said apologetically, "Father-in-law, the promise I made back then will never change. It's just that there are many things I have to do. I beg you to let me see Qing Mei." "Is that so? You've already abandoned my daughter once. How can I trust you again?" The Qingsong Taoist said angrily. "I won't abandon her again because she's my wife. She's a part of my Luochen mountain. I won't abandon any family," Qingyan said seriously. Back then, Qingyan had chosen to leave Qing Mei because of the misunderstanding caused by Luo Shan. Qingyan had left Qing Mei for his master's sake. At that time, their relationship was very inexperienced. They had just met and didn't make any promises of eternal love. They only had a simple good impression of each other. Although Qingyan was very sad about breaking up without a promise, he felt that he had done the right thing. He had broken up decisively so that he wouldn't drag down his master or delay Qing Mei's future. But now, Qingyan had already married Qing Mei. He wouldn't do anything irresponsible. Qing Mei was already his family. He had been fighting to protect his family all these years. He wanted to turn back his junior brothers who had gone astray. He wanted to find his master. He wanted to reunite his family. Abandoning his family was the last thing he would do. "You only remember now that you're Qing Mei's husband? Then why haven't you come back to see her for so many years? You have your own things to do, but does my daughter have to worry about you all the time?" The Qingsong Taoist said angrily, "I'm sorry. You're right. I'm not a good husband, but I won't do anything to let Qing Mei down. I'll only love her in my life. I promise." Qingyan clenched his fists. The Qingsong Taoist's chest heaved up and down because of anger. Although he was only an out-of-body cultivator, as a father, he didn't want to see his daughter sad. If Qing Mei didn't want to see Qingyan, he would stand on his daughter's side. "Senior Qingsong, my senior brother values his family very much. Qing Mei is already a part of our Luochen sect. I promise that he won't let Qing Mei down." Muyu walked over from the end of the path with complicated feelings. "Muyu." The Qingsong Taoist gradually calmed down when he saw Muyu. He slowly let go of Qingyan's collar and said, "Muyu, I won't say anything because of you, but I don't care what he thinks. Everything will be decided by Qing Mei. If Qing Mei wants to see him, I won't stop her. But for now, it's best if he doesn't go see my daughter." The Qingsong Taoist took one last look at Qingyan before leaving the mountain and heading back to his room. "Thank you." Qingyan forced out a smile. "Senior brother, do we have to talk about this?" Muyu walked to a large rock on a mountain and sat down. Qing Mei sat on top of the mountain and stared blankly into the distance. She was happy that Qingyan had returned, but she didn't have the courage to face him. She clearly wanted to hug that young man tightly, but she was afraid that she would never be able to. Her heart was filled with contradictions. "Big sister Qing Mei, can I sit down?" Tian Ran walked over and asked. Qing Mei raised her head and saw Tian Ran. She wiped her tears and nodded. "Big sister Qing Mei, can I hug you?" Xiao Shuai turned back into a little beast and happily jumped around. Qing Mei stretched out her hand and hugged Xiao Shuai. Xiao Shuai had always been liked by girls. This was his innate ability. When they were in the 50-mile garden in the south, Xiao Shuai rubbed himself against the bosom of all the girls in the Falling Dust sect. "Big sister Qing Mei's bosom is so warm," Xiao Shuai said. Qing Mei stretched out her finger and stroked Xiao Shuai. Tian Ran stretched out her hand and flicked Xiao Shuai's head and said, "You say this to everyone you meet. In the entire Falling Dust sect, you're the only one who's half-hearted." Xiao Shuai pouted his mouth and said, "Nonsense. Isn't there still Muyu?" Tian Ran snorted. "The two of you have been together for a long time. You're both the same." Qing Mei smiled. "Big sister Qing Mei. Actually, Qingyan is a very responsible senior brother. He has always had you in his heart. It's just that he has to take on his own responsibilities and busy himself with some things. Tian Rand said seriously. Qing Mei shook her head. He took on the responsibilities of the Falling Dust sect, but not me. Tian Rand thought for a moment and said, You know my identity, right? I mean, other than the people of the Red Dust sect? Qing Mei nodded. He told me before that you are the daughter of a true god. Tian Rand put her elbows on her knees and rested her chin on her hands and said, Do you know how Changyan got his name? Qing Mei shook her head. My father gave it to him. He said that he hoped that he would be able to keep his promise. Among us siblings, he was the first to follow my father. Maybe he was influenced by my father, but his way of doing things is very similar to my father. Tian Rand said. Qing Mei listened in silence. Ever since she found out about Feng Haochen's true identity, she felt sincere respect for this old man. It's hard to explain things like responsibility. Just like my father, he's never been a very responsible person. Did you know? I stayed in Falling Dust Mountain for a year and didn't reunite with my father. I think he doesn't even know that I'm his daughter. To be honest, as a father, he's quite irresponsible. Tian Rand curled her lips, but then smiled. Chapter 1070. True God, he's very great. Qing Mei said softly. Tian Rand tilted her head and said, Other people think he's great, but from the bottom of my heart, I don't like his greatness. However, my mother said that my father has more responsibilities than we can imagine. Not only is he a husband, but he's also the hope of humanity. Qingyan also has a lot of responsibilities. He's a husband, a senior apprentice brother, and a disciple. He's like my father, willing to take responsibility. However, at least he can come back to find you. I don't even know where my father is right now. My mother also hasn't met my father, and I haven't truly acknowledged my father. Tian Rand's tone was a bit gloomy. She had always been a very pure girl, so her thoughts were very straightforward. Sorry, I didn't know you had such a past. Qing Mei said, It's fine. In any case, if you like someone, you'll like some of their characteristics. A responsible person like senior apprentice brother Qingyan wouldn't be half-hearted. He's not like Mu Yu, a womanizer. Tian Rand snorted. Big sister Tian Rand, I'll tell Mu Yu that you said he's a womanizer. Xiao Shuai giggled. Go tell him. I didn't say anything wrong. The one who should be guilty is him. Who told him to go find another girl behind my back? Tian Rand rudely rubbed Xiao Shuai's head. You forgave him? Qing Mei asked curiously. What else can I do? I heard Xiao Shuai secretly tell me that Mu Yu almost went crazy to save me. It's a pity that I didn't get to see him anxious. It would have been very fun. I like to see him anxious for me. Tian Rand giggled. That girl is Xiao Shui, right? Qing Mei had seen Xiao Shui once. Back in the 50 Li Garden in the south, Xiao Shui had met everyone in order to set up the Nine Heavens Sealing Demon Formation. However, Tian Rand wasn't there at that time. Tian Rand nodded. But forget it. Mu Yu likes Xiao Shui mostly because of the Gomong in his body and the mysterious underworld in Xiao Shui's body. I knew that Mu Yu must have paid a huge price to save me. It was very likely that he had made some kind of deal with Gomong, and it might have been related to his life. He thinks that I don't know anything, but I'm not that stupid. Tian Rand had always been clear about this. When she chose to sacrifice herself to open up a path for Mu Yu to escape, it was because she had caused Mu Yu to fall into this predicament. She had grown up in the Red Dust sect, so she had a simple personality. However, she knew the rules of the cultivation world. She would not believe that someone who burned his own life force would not be able to recover without paying a price. However, she did not ask further because she knew that even if she asked, Mu Yu would definitely not tell her. Then you, Qing Mei asked hesitantly. I can't help it. Who told me to like that stupid guy? I definitely have to think of a way to stop him from doing something stupid. At the very least, Spirit Lord Jin Yameng in Qingyan's body, Rushu, doesn't like any other Spirit Lord Jin Yameng, so it won't affect Qingyan. With senior brother Qingyan's personality, he won't let you down. And I still have a love rival, Tian Rand said helplessly. Qing Mei's lips moved as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she did not say anything. Actually, you should have noticed that everyone in the Falling Dust sect values their family very much. The four of them have different opinions and walk different paths, but they have always avoided hurting each other. They're all thinking of ways to save my father. Luo Shang and Xiang, and even destroyed the Red Dust sect, which I grew up in, to avenge me and Muyu. Although I don't really like what they did, I can't blame them. Luo Shang left because he couldn't control the power of Hui Yameng in his body and accidentally injured senior sister Ling Er. He chose to leave so that the same thing wouldn't happen again. As the eldest senior brother, Cheng Yin is very responsible and won't be half-hearted. You don't have to worry about that. Tian Ran smiled. I'm also very responsible. I also value my family very much. I like you guys the most. Love you guys. Xiao Shuai said happily. I know. You're the best. Tian Ran smiled and hugged Xiao Shuai. Xiao Shuai shamelessly rubbed himself against her. Qing Mei was silent for a long time before nodding. I understand. Thank you, Tian Ran. No need to thank me. We're all family. I'll go call senior brother Qing Yin over. Xiao Shuai, come with me. Don't be a third party. Tian Ran stood up and ran down the mountain with Xiao Shuai in her arms. No, I want to watch the show. Xiao Shuai shouted in dissatisfaction. What are you looking at? I'll give you something good to eat. Tian Ran hugged Xiao Shuai tightly. Really? Then I want to eat roast goose. Xiao Shuai shouted happily. Soon, Qing Yin appeared at the top of the mountain in a hurry. His expression was a little guilty, but the way he looked at Qing Mei didn't change. He only had eyes for Qing Mei. Qing Mei, you didn't do anything to let me down, right? Qing Mei asked. Cheng Yin shook his head. I will never do anything to let you down. Qing Mei stood in place and looked at the person she thought about day and night. Finally, she revealed a smile that she hadn't seen in a long time. Halfway up the mountain, Xiao Shuai moved to Muyu's side and said with a naughty smile, Muyu, just now Big Sister Tian Ran said you were a happy big radish. Looks like Big Sister Tian Ran has a problem with you. Muyu moved to Tian Ran's side and asked, Xiao Shuai just said I was a happy big radish. What does that mean? Will I make you very happy? Tian Ran thought for a moment. Xiao Shuai is hungry. He likes to eat big radishes the most. Eating big radishes makes him happy. Muyu said in surprise, Xiao Shuai, I didn't know you changed your taste. You don't like to eat big radishes. Xiao Shuai rubbed his head and muttered, Strange. Didn't Tian Ran say that Muyu was a happy big radish? Why does it seem like something is wrong? I thought that Muyu would be ashamed when he heard about happy big radish. Shouldn't Muyu be ashamed? Half-hearted happy big radish. Did you say something wrong? Let's go, we won't disturb them. Let's go find Grandpa Village Chief. Muyu pulled Tian Ran and flew to the array hall. Master Lu had already arranged a residence for Boyong Daoren and Gui Tian. The array hall was extremely large, so it was not a problem for these people to live in it. Shimen Wuji and Wan did not come to the array hall. The evil sects had suffered a great loss this time, and the gambling city was no longer safe. They needed to find a new place to settle down the evil sections. After Qing Yin explained the matter clearly, he also came to the array hall. Muyu and Qing Yin came back this time for the silhouette being. Muyu, you mean you want to go to the silhouette being? Zhuge Shaosheng frowned. The silhouette being was not a good organization. It could be said that this organization was everywhere, just like the Sanchong Palace. However, the silhouette being only took money to do business and would not take the initiative to intervene in anything. Master Lu said next to them, Why are you two looking for the people of the silhouette being? Qing Yin said casually, Shadow Killer Dong, Ji was killed by me. What? The faces of Zhuge, Shaosheng, and Master Lu changed drastically. Each of the 24 shadow killers of the silhouette being represented the god of death. The targets they took on were all doomed to die. The shadow killers on the Supreme Immortal list were not so bad, but if they were not on the Supreme Immortal list, it meant that they had terrifying strength and were very difficult to kill. After a long time, Master Lu came back to his senses and said with a wry smile, You two are really powerful. Muyu killed Shadow Killer Qingming, and you killed Shadow Killer Dongji. I don't know what to say. Muyu said, Master Lu, when I killed Shadow Killer Qingming. He was only at the spirit severing stage, but Shadow Killer Dongji was at the crossing tribulation stage, and my senior brother has already stepped into the Mahayana stage. Zhuge, Shaoxing, and Master Lu looked at each other in dismay, their hearts already shocked to the extreme. Chengyan had actually stepped into the Mahayana stage? They looked at Qingyan with even more solemn eyes. They thought that Mu Yu was already heaven-defying enough, but they didn't expect that Mu Yu's senior brother was not even human. Zhuge Shaosheng said with some awe, Lord Qingyan, Sect Master Zhuge, is too polite. Just call me Qingyan. I also want to thank Sect Master Zhuge for taking care of my wife, father-in-law, and elder Sun these past few days. Qingyan said gently. Zhuge Shaosheng cupped his hands and said, It's my pleasure. We will not neglect anyone from the Falling Dust sect. After a pause, Zhuge Shaosheng continued. You killed Shadow Killer Dongji, so why are you looking for the silhouette being? Mr. Oldbu said that the silhouette being must have a powerful Mahayana stage cultivator. We are now facing the third palace. If there is one more enemy, I'm afraid. Qingyan said, Don't worry. The silhouette being and the shadowless clan of Chishui City will not interfere in the war of the third heavens. When I killed Shadow Killer Dongji, I learned one thing from his memory. The ancestors of the Shadowless clan and the Shadowless clan were not from the third heavens, but came for a secret of the third heavens. They have been looking for a place called the perfect river and mountain for thousands of years. Zhuge Shaosheng said in confusion, The perfect river and mountain? I've never heard of such a place in the third heavens. Chengyan nodded. I've never heard of it either, or this place is very secretive. The Shadowless clan and the Shadowless clan have been looking for it for so long, but still haven't found it. This place is like a pass that restricts the alien race in the third heavens. As long as there is no accident at this pass, even the White Realm can't completely control and kill all the cultivators in the third heavens. Zhuge Shaosheng and village chief Oldbu looked at each other. They knew nothing about all this. Even Mu Yu only knew about it from Qingyan. The White Realm has never dared to kill people openly in the cultivation world because the powerful power of the perfect river and mountain restricts him. It's a trick set up by my master, Qingyan explained. So you're looking for the silhouette being. Does it mean that the silhouette being already knows the whereabouts of the perfect river and mountain? Village chief Oldbu asked. The current situation was quite complicated. On the surface, the White Realm controlled the cultivation world, but behind the scenes, he was still so restrained. So this was the reason. Chengyan nodded. I broke into a stronghold of the silhouette being last time, but I don't know where the silhouette being's nest is, so I need you to inquire about the silhouette being. The more detailed, the better. Zhuge Shaosheng said solemnly, Don't worry. We will try our best to complete this matter. Mu Yu looked at Qingyan and said, Do you insist on doing this by yourself? Qingyan couldn't stay in the Array faction. He still had a lot of things to do. Looking for Luo Shang and Xiangnan was his next plan. Qingyan smiled and said, I have already stepped into the Grand Ascension stage. I know what to do. You know how to contact me next time. Don't worry. The most important thing for you now is to improve your cultivation as soon as possible. Next time when you face a Grand Ascension stage cultivator, it won't be so difficult. Qingyan didn't want Mu Yu to follow him because if Mu Yu didn't kill Gomong, he couldn't reach the Grand Ascension stage. He could only rely on himself. Then be careful. Chapter 1071. Mu Yu sat cross-legged in the middle of the array hall. Chaos, yin, and yang revolve around him, flowing and multiplying endlessly. The falling dust cultivation method was constantly practicing in his heart. In his eyes, there was only the shadow sword left. It was powerful and mysterious, demonstrating the sword momentum of the heavenly Sword 9 guides. In the past 10 days, he had cultivated with the help of the spiritual power of life and death chi. His cultivation had been promoted to the 7th heaven of the crossing tribulation realm. However, if he continued to rely on devouring spiritual power to improve his cultivation, the effect would be minimal. If he wanted to improve again, he had to devour masters of the crossing tribulation realm who were stronger than him. Those who were weaker than him could no longer improve him. At that time, he had refined a lot of spiritual power at the gate of hell. Muyu also gave all of it to Tian Ran and Zhuge Shaosheng. The improvement of their strength was very important to Muyu. As for the remaining spiritual power of the combination realm, he gave it to Master Lu, who often went out to inquire about the situation. With the help of Muyu, Master Lu was now at the sixth heaven of the combination realm. As a powerful array master, a sixth heaven of the combination realm could be regarded as a top master in the cultivation world. However, if he encountered a crossing tribulation realm master, he would still be helpless. When Master Lu was in the array sect, he had always taken good care of Muyu, so Muyu also took special care of Master Lu. He didn't want anything to happen to him. As for Jiangyu, he knew what he had to do. His cultivation method was mainly to sacrifice corpses. He would often leave the array sect to kill the remnants of the Gate of Hell and Stargate and bring their corpses back to cultivate. Gu Yiqian walked the path of body cultivation, so there was no need for him to use spiritual power. His family also began to cultivate with the help of Muyu. Now, the improvement of everyone's strength was very important. Xiao Shui often played happily with the chaotic yin and yang when Muyu was cultivating. He would not disturb Muyu. When Muyu practiced the falling dust cultivation method, he could be as calm as water. Sometimes Xiao Shui's casual words would make Muyu have a deeper understanding of the Sword Dao. Now that you have reached the seventh heaven of the crossing tribulation realm, even if your talent is high, it is impossible to reach the Deshang stage through meditation after 15 days. You should find another way. Xiao Shui jumped on Muyu's shoulder and said with a smile, "You're right." Muyu agreed with Xiao Shui's words. Although he was a genius who had no barriers in cultivation, even a genius needed time. As long as he was given a few more months, he would definitely be able to reach the ninth heaven of the crossing tribulation realm. As for whether he could reach the Deshang stage, it was hard to say. But with his ninth heaven of the crossing tribulation realm cultivation, he would definitely be able to fight against a palace envoy. Unfortunately, time was always tight for him. He had only stepped into the cultivation world for 10 years. And in 10 years, he had surpassed many people and reached a height that many people could not reach in their lifetime. He was already a terrifying genius. But for the powerful third heaven, this was far from enough, because they would not give Muyu enough time to grow. "Let's go. Muyu, let's go play with Big Black and Big White," Xiao Shui suggested. Big Black and Big White. Muyu pondered for a moment. Last time, Shimen Wuji and Wanwan told him how to control the power of the primal yin and yang, so he gradually understood how powerful the primal yin and yang was. He also knew how to display the full power of the primal yin and yang. Big Black and Big White were Deadwood Daddy's primal yin and yang. When the two types of primal yin and yang were combined, the power produced was very powerful. Back then, in the opening cauldron of the Dan Cauldron sect, Muyu relied on the special effect of the two types of primal yin and yang to increase his speed. This time, if he went to the Dan Cauldron sect again, he would definitely be able to use Shimen Wuji and Wan Wan's experience to make the primal yin and yang produce a more beneficial cultivation effect. Okay, let's go to the Dan Cauldron sect and see what the Dan Cauldron sect has become. Muyu stood up and made a decision. He left the array hall and wanted to call Tian Ran together. However, Tian Ran had also been cultivating with all her might. Because she knew that her father was still alive, she cultivated very hard. She wanted to increase her cultivation as soon as possible so that she could resist the third layer palace and save her father. Muyu didn't disturb Tian Ran. After informing Zhuge Shaosheng and village chief Old Bu that he was going to the Dan Cauldron sect, he left the array sect. Because he was in a hurry, Muyu didn't stop midway and went straight to the Dan Cauldron sect. Even if Xiao Shui shamelessly begged to go to the city to buy food, he was rejected by Muyu. "Muyu, you've changed. You weren't like this before," Xiao Shui angrily said. "Then what kind of person was I before?" Muyu casually asked. "You used to eat anything delicious with me. Now that you've changed your mind, I'm very sad." Xiao Shui on Muyu's shoulder pulled Muyu's ear. Don't talk nonsense. Didn't you just ask village chief grandpa to make 2 big roast geese before you came out? Muyu snappily said. That was already half an hour ago. I've already digested it. Xiao Shuai said pitifully while rubbing his stomach. Endure it. Do you have the heart to let me starve? And I have the heart. Wow, my heart is broken. Along the way, Muyu and Xiao Shuai chatted casually. Finally, they happened to pass by a city. Muyu reluctantly agreed to go to the city. The streets of the city were bustling with pedestrians, but many of the pedestrians seemed to be in danger. Now that the prestige of the 8 gates had collapsed like the Sanchon Palace, the Stargate of the Red Dust sect, and the Gate of Hell had been destroyed one after another, the people of the other 5 sects had no deterrent force. Not to mention, the Sanchon Palace's despicable act of wanting to destroy the gambling city was spreading in the cultivation world. Many people began to realize that the Sanchon Palace was planning some kind of conspiracy and the 8 gates were accomplices. They were unwilling to listen to their orders. There's someone selling Tonghalu over there. Wow, I'm so happy. Xiao Shuai, who had transformed into his human form, skipped over to an old man selling Tonghalu. The old man selling Tonghalu was a mortal. He was shouting with all his might. When he saw the lively and cute Xiao Shuai, he was also happy. He smiled and said, Little kid, do you want to buy Tonghalu? Yes, yes. Xiao Shuai excitedly scanned the Tonghalu straw rack. It was densely packed with countless Tonghalu sticks. There were at least 70 to 80 sticks. Little kid, how many sticks do you want to buy? The old man asked with a smile. How many sticks? Xiao Shuai tilted his head and thought for a moment. Then he stretched out a finger. Okay, 1 stick is 3 copper coins. The old man plucked a stick of Tonghalu and handed it to Xiao Shuai. Xiao Shuai shook his head. I want to buy your Tonghalu tree. Buy a Tonghalu tree? The old man was stunned. This was the first time he had heard someone describe a Tonghalu straw rack as a tree. It means I want to buy all of it. Xiao Shuai's saliva was already dripping from the side of his mouth. When the old man heard that he wanted to buy all of it, he looked at Muyu and understood that he had met a rich man. He was so happy that his wrinkles relaxed. He hurriedly said, buy all of it. If you buy all of it, you have to. Let me count how many Tonghalu sticks I made today. Wait a moment. Muyu helplessly handed over 100 spirit stones to the old man selling Tonghalu. The old man was flattered and hurriedly said, Sir, there's no need for so many spirit stones. 1 spirit stone is enough to buy all of my Tonghalu sticks. Also, I have to look for you. Oh my God, I can't afford to look for you. The old man rummaged through his pockets in distress. There were only pieces of silver and copper coins in his pockets. Those were the currency of mortals. When mortals collected spirit stones, they could go to the bank and exchange them for silver. Spirit stones were useless to them. 1 spirit stone could be exchanged for a lot of silver. Muyu looked at the dark-faced old man and said, You can have it all. Change the rest of the money into silver and find a safe place to hide. Now that Muyu was the leader of the Formation Talisman sect, there was no need to be stingy. He thought of the turmoil in the cultivation world. In fact, the ones who were injured were the mortals who had no cultivation. He didn't care much about the lives of cultivators. He just felt that mortals shouldn't be killed at will. Really? The old man was overjoyed. Looking at the pile of white spirit stones in front of him, he was also very excited. After getting Muyu's affirmation, he hurriedly picked up a bag and put the spirit stones in it. He said happily, That's great. After deducting half of the tax, there's enough left. Deducting half of the tax? So much? Who do you have to pay the tax to? Muyu asked in surprise. The old man looked around vigilantly. After making sure that no one saw him, he explained, We mortals can go to the bank to exchange spirit stones. Originally, 1 spirit stone was worth 100 silver. But recently, the 5 sects have started to unite and form the 5 Mountains Alliance. I heard that they're going to set new rules for the cultivation world. Now, anyone who disobeys them will be killed. Even mortals like us who are lucky enough to get spirit stones from you have to hand over half of it. The 8 sects are going to set new rules? Muyu asked calmly, Are they going to use force to control the cultivation world? How would mortals like us know about these things? Anyway, Yaman is doing whatever he wants. We can only obey and don't dare to ask. Now that you've given me 100 spirit stones, I have to go to the extreme immortal pavilion to exchange them. The old man was quite open-minded. As a mortal, he was as insignificant as an ant in front of Yaman and cultivators. He accepted his fate. After the old man finished speaking, he dragged the bag of spirit stones to the extreme immortal pavilion not far away. The Sanchong Palace is finally not going to use Yaman to beat around the bush. They're going to use force. What is he going to do this time? Is he going to rely on the Five Mountains Alliance to build a Sanchong Empire? Is Bai Jia going to be the emperor? Xiao Shuai walked on the street proudly. He was hugging a candied fruit tree in his right hand and a stick of candied fruit in his left hand. Mu Yu said indifferently, "I'm just afraid that his empire won't be stable." They continued to walk forward. Then, they saw the old man who was selling candied fruit being stopped at the entrance of the extreme immortal pavilion by an arrogant young man in yellow from the Jindan period. The old man looked a little distressed. He took 5 copper coins from the young man in yellow and started to walk back. "What's wrong, old man?" Mu Yu asked the old man who was selling candied fruit. "Sir, it's you." The old man sighed and said, "The immortal master just said that the Five Mountains Alliance's rules have been set. Mortals can only exchange 100 spirit stones for 5 copper coins." Chapter 1072. In the past, if a mortal could obtain a single spirit stone, they would be able to exchange it for a lot of silver taels. They would be able to survive for at least half a year without a problem. But now, Mu Yu had given the old man 100 spirit stones and only exchanged them for 5 copper coins. The Five Mountain Alliance is too much. How dare they rob so blatantly? Xiao Shuai said with righteous indignation. "Sigh, there's nothing we can do. We don't dare to talk back to an immortal master." The old man took the copper coin and shook his head. He wanted to leave, but Mu Yu said, "Old man, don't go yet. Wait here." Mu Yu quickly walked towards the yellow-robed young man, standing at the entrance of the extreme immortal pavilion. At this time, the yellow-robed young man was smugly putting the 100 spirit stones he had robbed from the candied hawthorn old man into his own pocket. "You mortals, what's the point of having spirit stones? It's already good enough to exchange them for a copper coin." The young man in yellow was called Zhang Ba. He was the guard of the pavilion and was responsible for the exchange of money between mortals and immortal masters. Mortals were not allowed to enter the pavilion. They were in a shop next to the pavilion that specialized in exchanging spirit stones. Originally, the person in charge of exchanging money in each city was a mortal. This was a hard rule. Moreover, this person had to be personally appointed by the city lord. This was because only mortals would treat the matter of a mortal master seriously and would not embezzle spirit stones. However, now that 3 of the 8 sects had been destroyed, the remaining sects began to form the Five Mountains Alliance. They planned to reshuffle the cards in the cultivation world. Therefore, the city lords of the cities had to listen to the commands of the Five Mountains Alliance. Many rules had to be rewritten in order to firmly control the cultivation world. Zhang Ba was the grandson of a tribulation-passing stage elder of the Xianling sect. His talent was not good, but he had a good grandfather. Therefore, he forcibly took over this position. During this period of time, he had secretly earned countless spirit stones by exploiting mortals. There was no need to mention how proud he was. "Senior Marshal Brother Zhang, you're right. Mortals are just animals to us. Giving them a copper coin is already lenient." A thin and shrewd man next to him said with a flattering expression, "You're right. Why do I feel that your words are so pleasing to the ears?" "Huh, don't worry. When I have the chance in the future, I will talk to my grandfather and let you enter the inner sect from our Xianling sect's outer sect." Zhang Ba smiled proudly. The Xianling sect disciples were also divided into outer sect and inner sect. Inner sect disciples had higher status than outer sect disciples in terms of cultivation resources and cultivation techniques. Does your Xinling sect also have mouse Taoist? Zhang Ba and Lu Ji were so angry that their faces turned red. Zhang Ba said angrily, "You dare to insult my grandpa? You're courting death." Mu Yu didn't seem to have any cultivation at all. Originally, when he came to the city, he hid his cultivation in order to not attract attention. At his level, it was very easy to hide his aura. Lu Ji and Zhang Ba mistakenly thought that Mu Yu was just a person who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. They immediately wanted to teach Mu Yu a lesson. "Senior brother, I'll take care of this kind of person." Without waiting for Zhang Ba to make a move, Lu Ji had already rushed towards Mu Yu. As long as he performed well in front of Zhang Ba, it wouldn't be a problem for him to enter the inner sect of the Xinling sect. Let me. I like to bully the strong the most." Little Shuai gnawed on the last hawthorn in his hand and then revealed an innocent smile. Then the bamboo stick in his hand had already pierced out. Lu Ji still wanted to take down Mu Yu in one move, but he didn't expect little Shuai's bamboo stick to pierce through his palm. A huge force sent him flying, and his hand were nailed to the wall. That bamboo stick was covered with a strange spiritual power, making him unable to break free even with his Jindan period strength. "You're courting death." Zhang Ba looked in shock and anger at Lu Ji, who was nailed to the wall with both hands dripping with blood. He knew in his heart that Lu Ji's cultivation was far higher than his, but he did not expect that Lu Ji would be defeated by a thin bamboo stick in just one move. "This guy, I'll kill him. I don't want to be annoyed just looking at him." Little Shuai took out another hawthorn and chewed it. Zhang Ba pretended to be fierce and shouted, "You dare to kill me? Are you courting death? You should know that my grandpa is a tribulation passing stage elder of the Xinling sect. If I lose a single strand of hair, you will be torn into pieces and my entire family will be executed. He is now in the extreme immortal pavilion next door. It's not too late for you to kneel and beg for mercy." "Is that so?" Mu Yu's mouth curved into a strange smile. Little Shuai chewed on the hawthorn, and a hawthorn seed jumped out of his mouth. With a whistling sound, it went straight for Zhang Ba's throat. The people of the 8 gates were lackeys of the Sanshong Palace. To Mu Yu and the others, death was nothing to be regretted. However, when the hawthorn seed hit Zhang Ba's body lit up with a yellow light and blocked the hawthorn seed. This guy was indeed the grandson of a tribulation passing stage elder. He had a treasure given to him by his grandpa to protect his life. No wonder he could be so arrogant and despotic. You want to kill me with just your strength? Don't you know that my grandpa is the Wolf Slayer Taoist?" Zhang Ba sneered. "Oh, you actually have some skills?" Little Shuai's mouth squirmed and spat out another hawthorn seed. This time, with a bang, Zhang Ba's protective barrier directly shattered. Zhang Ba's face suddenly changed. "I already said that cockroaches are meant to be killed. You might as well call your grandpa here too," Little Shuai said with a lisp. "Then let's see if you have the ability." Zhang Ba had already crushed a jade pendant in his hand. In just a breath's time, the aura of a tribulation passing stage expert had already enveloped the entire shop. Then a majestic voice rolled out like thunder. "Who dares to hurt my grandson?" Accompanied by the loud voice, a gloomy old man had already appeared beside Zhang Ba. He stood arrogantly with his hands behind his back and coldly sized up Mu Yu. This person was the Grand Elder of the Xinling sect, the Wolf Slayer Taoist. "Grandpa." When Zhang Ba saw the Wolf Slayer Taoist, it was as if he had found his savior. He immediately straightened his back and stared at Mu Yu and Little Shuai as if he was looking at a dead person. He said arrogantly, "Grandpa, it's them. They actually threatened to kill me. This is unforgivable." The Wolf Slayer Taoist touched Zhang Ba's head with pity. He doted on this grandson that he had held in his later years. Although his cultivation was not high, he had already thought of how to raise his grandson's cultivation. When he looked at Mu Yu, his eyes were filled with killing intent. "Since the two of you dare to touch my grandson, I just happened to obtain a secret technique. It just so happens that I'll use the two of you as an experiment and extract your cultivation from my grandson." "Grandpa, what secret technique?" Zhang Ba asked in surprise. The Wolf Slayer Taoist smiled and said, This is a soul technique bestowed by the master of the third palace. As long as you cultivate according to the method and absorb the soul essence of these people, you can increase your cultivation. This way, in the future, when Grandpa is not around, you can protect yourself. Zhangba was extremely excited and said, "Grandpa, then hurry up and kill them. I want to cultivate the secret technique of the third palace." The wolf slayer Taoist sneered and said, "The two of you came to court death. You can't blame others." "Court death? No, we're here to find trouble," little Shuai said casually. "Guys who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth." The wolf slayer Taoist smiled contemptuously and then asked Zhangba, "You decide how the two of them should die. Do you want to destroy their cultivation or directly cut off their limbs? As long as you want to, you can kill them however you want. The secret technique only needs their souls. Their bodies don't matter." Recently, there have been reckless people questioning the dignity of the extreme immortal pavilion and the Five Mountains alliance everywhere. We have already killed a lot of people. We need some people to make an example out of them and let everyone understand the consequences of violating the new rules that we have established today. The wolf slayer Taoist looked at Mu Yu coldly. The reason why he did not immediately take action was that the 8 sects and the third palace had lost their prestige. Many self-cultivators who came out of the gambling city no longer blindly worked for them. At this time, the remaining 5 sects of the 8 sects wanted to unite and set new rules for the cultivation world. They needed to use iron and blood to deter self-cultivators. Chapter 1073. Then chop off their limbs and hang their corpses on top of the city gate. Zhangba raised his head and looked at Mu Yu and Little Shuai mockingly. He had already sentenced Mu Yu and Little Shuai to death. "I'll listen to you." Wolf slaying Taoist nodded. Then, his figure flashed as he charged towards Mu Yu. In his eyes, killing Mu Yu and Little Shuai was a piece of cake. However, Mu Yu only looked at Wolf slaying Taoist indifferently and stretched out a hand. Swish! Taoist wolf slayer's eyes widened in disbelief. Mu Yu's speed had reached the limit, and his throat had been grabbed by Mu Yu in an instant. He didn't even have the slightest chance to resist. "You want to kill me?" Mu Yu grabbed Wolf slaying Taoist's neck and lifted him up. You, how could you?" Wolf slaying Taoist felt as though a powerful spiritual energy had surged into his body. With his throat grabbed, he couldn't move at all. He couldn't even summon his spiritual energy. His face flushed red, and he almost couldn't breathe. How could this be? Zhangba was already scared silly. In his memory, his powerful and omnipotent grandfather was still discussing with him how to kill Mu Yu. However, he didn't expect that in just one exchange, his grandfather would be lifted up like a stray dog. How could this be? Zhangba couldn't wrap his head around it. His grandfather was a cultivator at the second heaven of the tribulation stage. He was one of the top cultivators in the sect. Everyone tried to curry favor with him because of his grandfather. However, that valiant grandfather couldn't even last half a move in the hands of a young man. It was unbelievable. Who exactly are you?" Wolf slaying Taoist asked in horror. "Who am I? You don't have the right to know." The divine soul wood in Mu Yu's hand flowed out. He realized that Wolf slaying Taoist wasn't controlled by the divine soul array. This meant that Wolf slaying Taoist had taken the initiative to obey the orders of the threefold palace. "A person like you deserves to die." Although Mu Yu wanted to kill the wolf slaying Taoist, he still chose to use the spirit array to control him, as he needed to know the current movements of the Five Mountains Alliance. "Greetings, Master." Taoist wolf slayer knelt respectfully before Mu Yu. "Grandpa Yu." Zhangba was stunned when he saw his godlike backer kneel down. He staggered 2 steps and sat on the ground. Who was the one who wanted to die just now? Little Shuai looked at Zhangba with interest. Zhangba's face was as white as a sheet of paper. His arrogance was gone, and he was no longer as arrogant as before. He was so scared that his pants were wet. Mu Yu didn't care about Zhangba. Instead, he asked Wolf slaying Taoist tell me about the situation of her 5 sects and what plans the people of the threefold palace have. Wolf, slaying Taoist, replied, "We, the Five Mountains Alliance, are under the orders of the threefold palace to reorganize the order of the entire cultivation world. We will use force to make everyone in the cultivation world obedient and prevent any rumors that are unfavorable to the threefold palace from spreading. Anyone who dares to resist will be killed without mercy." Muyu said coldly, "The war between Yuman and the cultivators can't continue. Are you planning to be shameless?" Nowadays, the threefold palace's notoriety had spread far and wide, and the reputation of the Eight Gates had also plummeted. Because the Eight Gates had lost 3 of their sects, and one of them was related to the Yumming Devil Clan. The self-cultivators all understood how powerful the Yumming Devil Clan was, and were unwilling to be used by the threefold palace. Therefore, in order to protect their dark rule, the threefold palace began a violent reorganization. Although the 8th-sect vitality was greatly damaged, as long as there was a tribulation passing stage cultivator from the 8 sects, many people wouldn't be able to resist. Even if they didn't want to be used, they wouldn't dare to gossip. What is the secret technique of the threefold palace that you mentioned? Muyu continued to ask. Wolf, slaying Taoist, took out a white stone and handed it to Muyu. He said, "This is called a soul stone. As long as you kill someone, the soul stone will gather the soul of the person you killed into this stone. The soul stone will become stronger. If a cultivator fuses with the soul stone, they can rely on the soul stone to increase their cultivation. I am planning to help my grandson fuse the soul stone into his body." The soul stone was only half the size of a palm. It emitted a sacred white light that made people feel reverence. Why did the threefold palace make this soul stone again? Little Shuai hugged the hawthorn tree and asked in confusion. Muyu took the soul stone. A cold aura came from a soul stone. It was like a piece of 1,000-year-old ice, making people's souls shiver involuntarily. He carefully studied the soul stone. His expression changed slightly. He said, "What a vicious method. What's wrong?" Little Shuai took the soul stone curiously. He felt it and was surprised. Little Shuai returned the soul stone to Muyu with some disgust. He said, "This soul stone is indeed the same as the maggots of the threefold palace that we encountered. It can turn the soul into soul power and make oneself stronger. However, the soul technique is used by the threefold palace. It is not something that cultivators can cultivate. In the beginning, the cultivation of people who fuse with the soul stone will advance by leaps and bounds. Once their cultivation reaches the body integration stage, the soul of the person who fuses with the soul stone will become a part of the soul stone and be swallowed by the soul stone. The soul stone will become even stronger. At this time, the threefold palace will recover these soul stones, and the soul stone will become the source of power for the threefold palace." Muyu nodded. That is indeed the case. Nowadays, the cultivators would not casually start a war with Yaman. The threefold palace's source of soul power was restricted. They did not want to reveal their true colors yet, so they created the soul stone. In order to become stronger, the cultivators who fused with the soul stone would kill people and collect souls. When the time was right, the threefold palace would kill the cultivators who fused with the soul stone and turn them into the source of soul power. The threefold palace's plan was like sowing seeds in the cultivators. They wanted the cultivators to continuously kill people to grow stronger. When the time was right, these cultivators who fused with the soul stone would be like ripe fruits that could be picked and eaten. All of this was completely unknown to the self-cultivators. If it weren't for Muyu and Little Shuai, who had dealt with the people of the Sanshong countless times, they wouldn't have discovered the conspiracy hidden in the soul stone. "This kind of thing should be destroyed," Little Shuai said. Muyu asked, "Then how many people have you killed?" Wolf, slaying Taoist, replied, "After I came to Eternal City, I have already killed at least 300 people who did not follow the rules of the threefold palace. After they were killed, their corpses were displayed at the city gate. They were condensed in the air using a special method and eaten by birds. Their souls have been collected in the soul stone. After I kill 500 of them, I will give them to my grandson to use. There were still some restrictions on the soul stone. Because Zhangba's cultivation was too low, the requirements for the soul stone were higher. Wolf-slaying Taoist had put in a lot of effort for his ignorant and incompetent grandson. Unfortunately, even Wolf-slaying Taoist himself did not know that once Zhangba fused with the soul stone, Zhangba would definitely die in the future. Muyu continued to ask, "What are the identities of the people who were killed?" Wolf-slaying Taoist replied, "Right now, we are specifically killing cultivators with high cultivation and reputation in the cultivation world. Most of them are people who oppose the threefold palace. There are also some sect elders who do not know what is good for them. As for those sect leaders who did not listen to us, I have also killed 23 of them. Right now, those sects are like a group of dragons without a leader and do not dare to resist anymore. Killing a sect's big shot is a great deterrent to others. Also, when those people from the Array faction were spreading rumors, they were captured by us and directly killed." Muyu was filled with anger. Many Array factions' Array masters were ordered to go to the cultivation world to gather information and carry out missions. Who would have thought that they would also get into trouble? He coldly said, "How many Array factions' Array masters have you killed?" "I have killed 5 Array factions, little Luo. However, in the morning, we captured 2 Xiantian Array masters who were spying nearby. We are preparing to execute them at the city gate at noon to let the entire city know the consequences of going against the threefold palace." Wolf-slaying Taoist said. Muyu's expression slightly changed. There were less than 20 Xiantian Array masters in the Array faction. 2 of them were actually captured. He had been in seclusion for the past 10 days or so. Usually, when the people of the Array faction went out to gather information, it was village chief Old Bu and Zhuge Xiaosheng who were in charge. He did not ask much, but he did not expect to accidentally encounter this matter. "What are the names of those 2 Xiantian Array masters?" Muyu asked in a deep voice. "One is called Lu Dei, and the other is called Situ Yangtian. I heard that the 2 of them are important figures in the Array faction. Killing them will have a great deterrent effect." Muyu coldly said, "How are they now?" Wolf-slaying Taoist felt the pressure from Muyu's body and fell to the ground with a pale face. He said they should have already been escorted to the city gate. Muyu's heart was already furious to the extreme. If he hadn't inadvertently come here, then Master Lu and Master Sidu would have died in the Yellow Springs. Muyu coldly glanced at Zhangba and said, "I'm here to take back those 100 spirit stones." Crash! A large pile of white spirit stones fell to the ground. There were at least hundreds of thousands of them. "Sir, these are all spirit stones. I beg you to spare my life. I won't dare to do it again." Zhangba hurriedly knelt on the ground and kowtowed nonstop. Muyu waved his hand and put away his 100 spirit stones. Then he said, "I only take my own things. You are not of much use to me." Muyu stared at Zhangba with a face full of killing intent. Then, with a thought, he allowed Wolf-slaying Taoist to regain his consciousness. The moment Wolf-slaying Taoist regained his consciousness, he immediately roared, "Who are you?" Muyu sneered and said, "I let you regain your consciousness to let you understand that you will have to pay the price for killing so many of my Array faction's disciples sooner or later." A gust of wind swept past. Swish! Zhangba was still kowtowing, but when he straightened his body, his head had already rolled on the ground and rolled in front of Wolf-slaying Taoist. Wolf-slaying Taoist looked at his grandson's head with his own eyes. His eyes were bloodshot as he said, You actually dared to kill my grandson. Not only will I kill you, if anything happens to Master Lu and Master Situ, I guarantee that I will destroy the entire Xianling sect." Chapter 1074. The city gate was already crowded with people. Every day at noon, this place would be very crowded. Ever since the 5 sects united, almost every day, there would be famous big shots being beheaded here, frightening many self-cultivators who were unwilling to accept the situation and wanted to rebel against the threefold palace. Liao Jianshu, the head of the Yanglan Temple who was at the spirit severing stage, the head of the visualization sect who was at the combination stage, the head of the visualization sect who was at the combination stage, the head of the Tiana Valley who was at the combination stage. Most of the people who were killed were prominent figures in the cultivation world. They were famous in the cultivation world when they were young. Although they could not be compared with the younger generation now, they were still famous. The heads and elders of these sects were upright and plain-spoken. After understanding the conspiracy of the Threefold Palace and the Five Mountains Alliance, they chose to call on the cultivators to rebel against the rule of the Threefold Palace. However, they were too weak and could not withstand a single blow from the Five Mountains Alliance. They were directly captured by the wolf-slaying Taoist and killed in front of everyone in the city. The people who were going to be executed today were the two innate array masters of the array faction, Liu Dei and Situ Yantian. Under Mu Yu's guidance, Liu Dei and Situ Yantian had already stepped into the body integration stage. A Khanate array master at the body integration stage was extremely intimidating in the entire cultivation world. The strength of an innate array master was originally more tyrannical than other cultivators. An innate array master of the combination stage could be said to be the top existence in the combination stage. Some time ago, due to the invasion of the Yumeng Devil clan, the status of array masters was comparable to that of the Danding sect's alchemists. The 19 Xintian array masters of the array sect were famous in the cultivation world, so Liu Dei and Situ Yantian were naturally known by many people. However, these two big shots were actually captured by the Five Mountains Alliance and were going to be executed in public. This matter shocked everyone in the city. Who would dare to challenge the dignity of the Five Mountains Alliance if they dared to kill two innate array masters? There were transparent soul power bubbles above the city gate. These bubbles floated in the void, and each bubble contained a mutilated corpse. Some of the corpses had been decapitated, while others had been cut in half at the waist. Their deaths were extremely tragic and also very impactful. The Five Mountains Alliance killed these self-cultivators who were unwilling to be enslaved and used special means to hang their corpses here as a warning to those who were unwilling to submit. Their corpses were protected so that they wouldn't rot, but they would be pecked by birds. Every person who was killed would have their faces combed back to how they looked when they were alive, so that everyone could see the identity of the person who was executed. Many people below the city gate were scared witless. Now, very few people dared to stand up and say no to the Five Mountains Alliance. They were afraid that they would be the next person to be publicly executed. Master Liu and Master Situ were both drenched in blood as they were tied up in the air. Their faces were haggard and their breaths were weak. There was an executioner on top of the city gate. He was the elder of the gate of life and death. His name was Tai Shasheng, and he was in the first sky of the tribulation stage. He was a cruel man who liked to torture and kill self-cultivators in all kinds of ways. Then, he would refine the bodies of self-cultivators into his own magic weapons. The self-cultivators who were executed at the city gate were all killed by him. So he had a morbid pleasure in killing people. At this moment, a middle-aged man in the body integration stage was on the execution rack. A soul nail was nailed in the middle of his forehead, making him unable to move. Taoist Southern Way, the leader of the Southern Way sect, publicly slandered the Sanchong Palace and questioned the decision of the Five Mountains Alliance. "You have committed a capital crime. How should I kill you?" Tai Shasheng stuck out his scarlet tongue and licked his dry lips. His eyes were filled with excitement. The Taoist Southern Way had a solemn expression and a short beard. He shouted coldly, "The Five Mountains Alliance and the Sanchong Palace bullied self-cultivators and killed the common people of the world. Your crimes are unforgivable. People with such vicious intentions will be punished by the heavens." "Vicious intentions? You said we are vicious? Then I want to see what your heart tastes like." Tai Shasheng slowly stretched out his fingers. His fingers were waxy yellow, as if they had been soaked in corpse water for 100 years. His fingertips began to grow 2-inch-long yellow nails. The Taoist Southern Way stared at Tai Shasheng's yellow nails with disgust. However, Tai Shashing's fingers had already reached the Taoist Southern Way's chest. His nails slowly pierced into the Taoist Southern Way's chest, as if the Taoist Southern Way's body was made of paper. "You!" The Taoist Southern Way suddenly straightened his body and revealed a pained expression. Crack! The Taoist Southern Way's heart had already been dug out. It was still beating in Tai Shashing's hand. The Taoist Southern Way's eyes were wide open as a hole appeared in his chest. However, he did not die immediately. There was a corpse aura in the hole that kept him alive. "Without your heart, my corpse aura can keep you alive for another 15 minutes. Don't worry, you will see how I kill you." You should know that people who oppose the Five Mountains Alliance will not have a good ending. Tai Shashing raised Taoist Nan Wei's heart to his mouth and swallowed it in front of everyone's eyes. All the onlookers could not help but feel a chill run down their spines as their stomachs churned. The life and death sex Tai Shashing was truly cruel. He actually ate someone's heart. The Taoist Southern Way watched with his own eyes as his heart was swallowed by Tai Shashing. Who would have thought that Tai Shashing would eat someone's heart in front of so many self-cultivators like a wild beast? "You're so cruel." The Taoist Southern Way trembled as he spoke. "This is just the appetizer." Tai Shashing coldly glanced at the onlookers. He did this to let all the self-cultivators know what would happen to those who did not listen to the Five Mountains Alliance and the Triple Palace. Swoosh! The Taoist Southern Way's two arms were forcefully torn off by Tai Shashing, followed by his left leg and right leg. The Taoist Southern Way gritted his teeth and groaned, but he still did not give in. He knew his fate from the beginning, but some people were unyielding and did not want to live under the rule of the dark. "Don't worry, I'll only skin your entire body. I won't damage your face. If your face is scratched, who will recognize you? Your face is going to be put on display to let everyone know who went against us and what happened to them." Tai Shashing's fingernails began to scratch the Taoist Southern Way's skin. No matter how unyielding the Taoist Southern Way was, he finally let out a blood-curdling scream. The heart-wrenching scream reverberated in the sky above the city, making the onlookers feel thirsty. Fresh blood spilled from the sky and onto the ground, as well as the onlookers. Everyone was shocked when they saw the execution. As a member of the Life and Death sect, Tai Shashing enjoyed refining corpses and killing people. However, it did not mean that every self-cultivator was as cruel as him. The entire process lasted for a quarter of an hour. During this time, Tai Shashing ensured that the Taoist Southern Way was still conscious and experiencing all the pain. In the end, he could not even make a sound. "Remember not to go against us in your next life. Die obediently." With a wave of his hand, Tai Shashing chopped off the Taoist Southern Way's head with his knife-like fingernails. The soul stone in his hand also emitted a ray of light and collected the Taoist Southern Way's soul. The Taoist Southern Way's eyes almost popped out. After being tortured for so long, death was a relief for him. Soon, two self-cultivators rushed over and began to tidy up the Taoist Southern Way's messy hair and clean the bloodstains on his face. In order to serve as a warning to other self-cultivators, the Five Mountains Alliance would clean up the faces of the victims. Even the wounds would be mended. Even the messy hair would be combed to maintain the appearance of the victims when they were alive. They would use their appearance to warn other self-cultivators who had rebelled against the Five Mountains Alliance and what would happen to them. It was a very powerful deterrent. The onlookers were already frightened by Tai Shashing. This kind of scene happened every day for the past few days. Every day, people would be killed by Tai Shashing's cruel methods. Originally, there were some people who did not want to follow the rules set by the Five Mountain Alliance. However, now that everyone understood the consequences of throwing an egg at a rock, they did not dare to speak out even if they knew the dirty scheme of the Threefold Palace. It's a pity that we still couldn't save the leader of the Southern Way sect. Master Lu sighed slightly. Looking at the Taoist Southern Way whose head had been chopped off and whose face was twisted in pain, his eyes dimmed. Situ Yan Tian smiled bitterly and said, "You're still feeling sorry for others. We'll soon become the next Taoist Southern Way and become one of these corpses." Master Lu did not seem to be afraid of death at all. He smiled and said, "A real man is indomitable. Why should I be afraid of dying for the sake of righteousness? I only hate that I can't see the day our sect master destroys the threefold palace with my own eyes. These people who have been beheaded are all cultivators with a conscience and backbone. They are unwilling to submit to the threefold palace and the Five Mountain Alliance. We have nothing to be afraid of." Sitiantian also smiled and said, "After fighting with you for a lifetime, I didn't expect you to say such righteous words." Master Lu glanced at Sitiantian and then looked at the other people who had been beheaded. He smiled bitterly and said, "These righteous men's hair has been combed meticulously and their faces have been washed clean. Although their bodies have been pecked by birds, only their heads are intact and can be identified. After we die, I think the sectmaster and sectmaster can still recognize us by our heads and collect our corpses. This is already a blessing in disguise." Sitiantian also laughed in the face of death. "It seems that the Five Mountain Alliance has inadvertently done a good thing. I really hope I can live to see the destruction of the Five Mountain Alliance and the Threefold Palace." Master Lu glanced at the pale and bewildered cultivators below and then looked at the sky. He sighed and said, "It's a pity that we didn't send the information back to the sect master. We still haven't done a good job in this matter. This information is very important to Muyu. If we're a step late, it's very likely that, alas, we're useless." When it came to the issue of information, Sitiantian was also somewhat unwilling. "I hope Muyu can find out about this matter. We really didn't do our duty. We didn't complete the task that we should complete and even paid with our lives." That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.